what a privilege to be with you, and to go through this whole weekend. And we watched the movie, and I knew there'd be some great expressions that come up after that, and thank you all the way through. Jiska, thank you for going through the process so transparently with everybody. It was beautiful because we had someone during the movie, Esther wrote in that she was even going through suicidal thoughts, and that she actually saw when Jiska popped through and started smiling and laughing, then that helped Esther pull out of the suicidal thoughts. So it just shows how we're all in this together, and we're all benefiting from the transparency that we offer here. We can all really let up what needs to come up and let out what needs to come out, and then trust that the Spirit will orchestrate all of the expressions and the movies and everything that we hear to bring about our healing in the mind. So it's quite intimate that we can do this. And Frances is joining us today.
Yeah.
You've enjoyed what you've seen of the weekend so far?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I actually have been watching everything and your shining faces the whole weekend. So I felt like I know every single one of you already. And just so grateful for you, whether you join us for the retreat for the first time or been here for a long time. But I want to just anchor what David just said. It's so precious when we started to just allow our hearts to be open, because it is such a gift to absolutely everybody who is watching. And Jesus says, look, you have received all the miracles, and you don't know that you have received it until you give it. And I really feel whenever you pour your heart out like that, you really started to see how much a gift that you have received and are able to offer, because everybody started to heal because of that connection, and that sharing is just really, really, really precious. So, thank you.
Yes, it's like really our lives become witnesses and demonstration for what is possible. So, when sometimes you can think of it as like there's this whole world of 7 billion people and different countries and cultures, but yet it still comes back down to this intimacy in our mind and in our relationships. And when we join together, we all gather together like this in these once-a-month retreats, then it's like our openness, our willingness to heal is really you might say, an example or a microcosm of the macrocosm. We're like the edge, like many great masters have said, is that point where you have the deepest, darkest fear and guilt. It's that same point where the light can stream through. So it's not seen, darkness and light are not held as if they don't have any kind of healing relationship, because it's literally, if you think of the light pouring through that point or that hole of the darkness and filling the mind with light, then that's where the authenticity comes in. If you're feeling very dark, like Jiska was really expressing how dark the dark can feel, and we could all, be there with it and be with her in this, and then the spaciousness and the prayers of everyone, and everyone joining, like calling on the light, the light just kind of pouring right through that puncture, that dark spot, where the light can come right through where the wounds seem to be, which is in the mind. That's where the light can reach us. It can be reflected in the world, and certainly in Christ's vision, that's what we're called to go into, is to go into this point of light in our mind, and let that radiate through us, through our mind, and light up the world. So that's why vision is seen to be something we can give. And I was talking about, with Ari's question, that idea, the point that where the mind chooses to completely join with the Creator and God takes the final step, that's really beyond our curriculum. We're here to learn how to be the bringers of light. We can't be getting too caught up into how long is it going to take me to perfectly accept this correction. We've got so much light to give right now, and we have it right now. It's not something that we don't have already within us. It's already there. So I think that's like something that we'll talk about a lot today, that we have the gift. We have the gift of light to give, and we can give it. There's nothing really that can hold us back from giving a gift that we already have.
Yeah. And another thing that I started to think was when I listened to you guys, when I listened to Ken and Greg and all of you, it was just so obvious to me that we didn't really choose our path, but our path chose us. You know, Jesus chose us, and our path actually chose us when we were the most clueless. We didn't really even know what we're looking for, where to look. And just one step at a time, it comes to us and become more and more obvious, more and more recognizable, more and more solid in our experience. So I thought, wow, you know, to say that we need to know, but we're here, right here, when we didn't really know anything about how the path was going to look like and was going to unfold. So the point for me was to see, you know, to accept that the path actually chose us, and there is a meeting point now because we recognize it. It's not just we're completely in this vagueness and this fog, but we also meet the path. We acknowledge it. We're aware of it, and we're grateful for being able to meet that. Then it is for us to fully accept it. Okay, this is the path. This is you who chose me. You know, somehow you made it all happen without my awareness. Then I'm just gonna say yes. That's all that Jesus wants us to do.
Yeah.
To say yes.
Yeah. Reminds me too of that song some of you might have heard of, like Total Eclipse of the Heart. You know, where once I thought I was falling apart, but it's a total eclipse of the heart. You know, the ego taught us that the world was important, that outcomes in the world was important, you know, be good, act right, be a good boy, be a good girl, learn lots of good things, which is really judgment, but nobody ever said in kindergarten or first grade, oh, we're going to give you a long curriculum of judgment now, starting with kindergarten and first grade, and then you'll be at this for the rest of your life, learning, not telling us, like Jesus told us from the Manual for Teachers, that it's a curriculum of judgment that we were handed in our mind from the ego, and we needed to unlearn. We really needed to unlearn the judgment, and that if we had an owner's manual, which I guess in some sense we did, you know, Jesus said, "Judge not" in the Bible, so there's the owner's manual. We had an owner's manual all along. It's 2 words. But nobody emphasized that, you know. Even in church, for me, it wasn't like those words were emphasized. It was like all this other stuff was added on. And then somehow we got caught up in outcomes, you know. Did you get the good grades? They didn't say, are you happy in school? They just said, did you get the good grade? What did you get on the exam? Instead of, are you happy? Are you happy, I think, is a more practical question that you should ask children, and even as adults. I've seen movies where they say, like Selma Hayek was a character in this one movie with Russell Crowe, and at the end of this breaking up movie, you know, somewhere in the movie, she said, are you happy? To him, because they'd gone through so many makeups and breakups, and she had a look on her face like a guilt. Like she was embarrassed about asking the question, are you happy? And that's pretty much of a commentary on this world. If are you happy is a question that raises embarrassment or guilt, or that, oh, that's not a real question. Why not? You know, that seems like an important question if you're starting to undo falsity. So what I really feel is that we're starting to see that outcomes, it's not really about outcomes in the world, it's about our state of mind. And in terms of judgment, Jesus says, without judgment, all outcomes are equally acceptable. Wow, that's an open-minded statement. Without judgment, all outcomes are equally acceptable. And then you can put that with another quote from Jesus, comparison must be an ego device, for love makes none. Oh wow, that's another open-mindedness expression. You know, comparison is an ego device. So, wow, we can all say we've been raised with a curriculum of evaluation, of judgment and comparison, of do the right thing, make the right judgments. And Jesus says, that's what we read yesterday, he said, no, that's how the world sees judgment. But actually, that's evaluation. That is keeping you in a state of split, a state of conflict, and that actually he tells us that judgment, which he associates with the Holy Spirit, judgment, he said, through you rather than by you, that judgment is wisdom. Wow. From the ego's version, which keeps you kept in darkness, to the Holy Spirit's version of judgment, which is the wisdom to guide you step by step, unwind you from the ego, unwind you from this world of time and space. Those are two different views of judgment. And so that's why Francis and I always talk, I don't think we can do a talk anymore without talking about guidance. We always get to, if you give us a couple hours, we always get around to that topic because it's so practical. That's the wisdom of the Holy Spirit coming through and giving you practical, day-to-day guidance on where you believe you are in time and space, and saying, oh, just have faith in me, and I'll take your mind higher and higher into higher frequencies, into higher vibrations, into a closer alignment with the light. And yeah, wow, we've got each other to do it with too. So we can't even claim the lonely card anymore. Jesus is like, with all these mighty companions, how can you still try to play that ego lonely card? Oh, woe is me, I'm in this fight all on my own. And no, it's not. You don't have to see it as a fight. It's a happy journey, adventure, going home. Well, there's so many points we could start. You've looked through all the questions, and also I mentioned too, I told Francis I would be at the car to come over here to the studio, and then Kenneth Price from our co-living community, just a message came to me right when I was getting ready to leave, so I took the time to read through your message, Kenneth, and I shared a little bit with Francis, but Kenneth's there at our co-living community up in Camas, and it was really precious that you poured that out, because that's the point when we really want, there's Kenneth, it's when you have a reaction to something and the rage comes up, and then you call for help. You just write to a mighty companion and say, hey, I've been working on the mind training this morning, but I just seem to flip into rage again, and that's why I took the time to really read through what you had written, because I was like, oh, it was relating to a post, a video, or something. But I think what I got from the bottom of your message to me was there was a pretty strong rage reaction to the idea. I don't know how or where, but it's all based on the interpretation. So to this idea that Jesus is the only way. And so I thought maybe that would be a good topic to go in, because you won't really hear those words coming out of my mouth. I did have a friend recently who wrote to me an email message, a pretty long one, and she wrote in it, she was so intoxicated with Jesus, but she actually said those very words in the email to me. She wrote, "Jesus is the only way, period." And I remember just shaking my head, and I'm going, no, that is very confusing to the mind that still believes in form. That's just like saying a leaf is the only way, or a particular flower, tulip. Tulip is the only way to God, I'm telling you. And to me, I took that the same way. And a lot of people, sometimes Christians, will say, but it's true. And I would say, listen, there's a big difference. We have to get the clear between form and content, because if Jesus is just love and a presence of love in your mind that's there, to help, that's one thing. But the word Jesus, or even the word God, for that matter, I have people in Europe, when I'm traveling in Europe, that it's like a 4-letter word. It's a 3-letter word in Europe. Use the God word, and they, don't you know we know science? And oh yeah, great, science. Let's talk quantum physics. It's all about the connection. It's all about the healing. It's all about the love, the embrace, the acceptance. But yeah, what do you feel with the whole thing with Jesus? Because you grew up in Beijing, and so you kind of came up through a very much of an atheist, or a very different perspective, and then it's almost like you came in and met Jesus, or had a Jesus experience with no connotation, no memories, like a little child with eyes wide open. And then Kenneth's interaction with Jesus was coming through a Christian church, which was basically saying, gays are going to hell, and gay has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus, and really almost feeling kind of more ostracized, excluded, excommunicated, associating those kind of feelings with that word Jesus because of the Christianity that was coming through. Whereas Frances is like, for her, she's just all wide-eyed and what is this? Who is this thing? Going to a church, and maybe with your mother, and just having some warm feelings come into your heart with no associations of anything with Christianity or the history of Christianity.
That's what I was thinking about it all, because I do know that before that, when I first went to church, I did have this strange idea that came to my mind out of nowhere in my early 20s, like, who's Jesus? Like, what is this all about? And I just started to think how amazing when our mind has this slight openness, then that little seed start to grow and be taken on this journey of finding out this profound presence turn out to be way beyond a historical figure, of course, but it's this pure essence of who we are. But at the beginning, it was purely just a little seed. I didn't even know where it's coming from, because where I grew up, that was not a topic. But I also was thinking about you, Ken, and everybody. I think must be that this is something we share. In our mind, there was a tiny little seed that started to feel this desire, this curiosity with this particular symbol. And this symbol just started to grow to say, I can use this symbol to take you all the way. And I do feel like, with Brahmanasa Yogananda and a lot of the other pathways, and they have the path find them as well. When he first met his guru, he kneeled down in tears. He had so many dreams about him. These paths seem to just come to us when, it's like a predestined. It's all written. Like yesterday we were talking about, it's so deep. And in that way, when we talk about form, it's almost impossible to judge the form and say which form is your form. But all that I can say is I feel so amazed when I realize that that the little seed in our mind started to get blossomed and eventually become this huge, pathway and fruit that Jesus is personally taking us every step along the way to this eternity. And for us, I feel like let's just enjoy the ride and say yes to it because we didn't really pick and choose it. And so is everybody else in the Eastern tradition, in the Buddhist tradition. When I listen to their pathway, it's amazing how the pathway found them. And it's their job to say yes, to really practice open-mindedness and to give themselves over to it. So in that way, we can just render this form irrelevant, to the judgment of what is right, what is wrong. And I think when David and I went to China, we have so many people ask that question about how do I know the course is my path, and can I practice multiple paths at the same time? And it's really the same lesson: know your path and go deep. That is the only message. And I feel like that is one thing we can know, which is the path that found us, which is that we feel we resonate with, then let's go deep with that. So,
yeah, that's something I heard, and I've shared with Francis, and for many years, was because I was kind of like, for a while there, I liked more. I think it was just intellectual curiosity, because I was like, well, they call it the spiritual smorgasbord. That's what people call it now. They're like, fascinated with the menu and looking at all the menu and almost making like some kind of composite theology. Slip a little bit of this in and a little bit of this and that. And yet I don't really feel that that's really what your issue is coming from. The rage, I think, is just coming from these interpretations of these associations of memories. Like, how could this be love? Almost like it just seems to be the farthest thing from the experience of love and acceptance. And so, whatever seeming pathway we're drawn to, it seems like that's where we still find ourselves doing that inner work when we find our mind tempted to pin something like happiness and joy and love onto a particular form, either expecting the form to be that love or that happiness or that joy, or expecting the form to lead us to that, and making some kind of inclusion-exclusion thing, which really is what you're getting at, Ken. And I think Barbara, I mentioned yesterday, very full message too about searching for that meaning, searching for the truth, searching for even the pathway, and not wanting to exclude anything that could be helpful, but also wanting to go into that experience, that feeling of love. That's what everyone is calling for. They want to just feel the love and the connection. And there seems to be these associations in the mind that seem to be just striking memories of not that. And then a hatred can rise up, a rage can rise up, almost like, how could you do this to me? How could you treat anyone, myself or anyone, in a hateful way? And that's more of a projection of our own. If we believe in the ego, there's where the self-hatred is. We're believing a lie about our identity, and there's huge hatred that generates out of that, rage generates out of that most people aren't aware of. You can't really continue to function as a human being with intense rage just coming from your heart and occupying your mind. It's hard to even do anything or to function. So that it's pushed, it's repressed, it's pushed out of mind so that there can be some sense of functionality. And yet, one of the the ideas that Jesus shared, the one that really hit me the strongest, I think, for me, when I was reading the Course, was when Jesus said, until you are willing to look upon the full extent of your own self-hatred, you will not be willing to let it go. And I think the reason it hit me so strong was that last part, you will not be willing to let it go. It was like he was saying, at some point you will have to allow up into awareness that which has been denied and repressed in order to let it go, only to let it go, not for any other reason, just to look upon the full extent. And to me that's looking within, that's really doing what you're doing, Kenneth. You're just as far as doing the path, you're looking at things in terms of mind training. You don't want to be a sleepwalker, or a walking zombie. You want to feel fully the feelings because you want to feel fully the love. And if there's a part of your mind that's been in denial and repression, you're just saying, no, I'm not going for that anymore. Turn it around. I'm going to turn it around. If my ship was going in that direction of denial and repression, let's crank the wheel here, and we are going the other direction, and we're going to set sail, and maybe we have to face some pretty high waves, and maybe even like that movie, A Perfect Storm, where the waves are a lot bigger than the boat. Sometimes it seems like those rage waves can be like, whoa, look at that thing. That thing's like 30 feet high. And that's facing our own self-hatred. So, yeah, maybe you want to share with us a little, Kenneth, because, it's present for you. It's something you woke up with, and you're like dealing with it this morning. So I think that can help. You can actually help all of us with this.
Well, thank you for your perspective, David. That's, we're here in this community to let go of the stories, but I'm not done letting go of my story. And I really, like Francis said, somebody planted the seed when I was very young. The Christians did. And I want to thank the Christians for planting that seed. But when I came into adolescence and discovered that I had a gay orientation, then all of a sudden that love, the Christians went into fear. And I didn't have a vocabulary for that. You tell a 17-year-old, they just think the love's been removed. They don't have all these metaphysical teachings to understand that, no, they're going into fear, they're facing theirs. And so then my story took a detour. And, my heart closed down to this wonderful love. And it created a 20, 25-year detour. And there was a lot of trauma in that detour. And so, David, when I found the Course in Miracles and I heard the word Jesus, but this is not the Christian Jesus. I think it was Deepak Chopra, wrote a book about the three Jesuses or something. But you've shared with me a metaphysical, and the Course is a metaphysical Jesus, which has unwound all of that nonsense, which created the misunderstanding in the first place. So, it's kind of like I'm taking the ball and running with it, but then, I get thrown this roadblock. This morning I opened up Facebook and I read, from a community member, Jesus is the only way, and this pain body just comes back. It roars to the surface. And, so, what do I do? What do I do? Run to the workbook, lesson 5. I'm not upset for the reasons I think. Well, yeah, that's a perfect lesson for this, but I was in so much rage. And so it was good. In this community, they call it a forgiveness opportunity. So I was in so much rage that I finally just said, this lesson's not working. I have to put on my jogging shoes, and I've just got to, go running and pray that way, which is one of my tools. You say from above the battleground, but and from above the battleground, that detour and all that trauma, that actually gave me depth. It gave me depth, and it gave me compassion, and it gave me many things. And it's a hard hole to dig myself out of, because those resentments, and I'm from the 12 steps, so we call them resentments. This community calls them grievances. I don't care what they're called. I have to face that victim, and I have to take responsibility for it. And I'm still in it. That's why I've chosen to come here and live in community. I can feel when that victim comes to the surface, and it has to be addressed. And it's a lot of work. So when I got back from jogging this morning, I had all these attack thoughts. I'm going to attack the ministry for allowing that Facebook. No. That's clearly an attack thought. Go jogging, Kenneth. So when I got back, I know the drill here. So when I got back, I said, just write David. Put it line by line, and let David help me unravel it. I can't unravel it by myself. That message to you was a cry for help. Can you help me see this? I was interpreting it from my egoic, they're wrong, I'm right. My ego says, I want them to feel the pain that we felt. No. Okay, listen, let's look at this from the Spirit's perspective. And that was my cry for help, which you answered beautifully. Thank you. And you too, Francis. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. We're all seeing your smile, and we're all grateful for love lifting us beyond that, because when the feeling of the rage, it just feels so heavy on the heart, and it feels so closed. You said it. It feels like it's a closed heart. And then when we can break through and just join in with a mighty companion and feel that, then the smile returns. And very much like Jiska yesterday, we all were watching her, and then when the smile came across Jiska, it was like, now we can close the meeting. We had to wait. We just had to say, stay with it. But when that beaming smile comes, then it just is so strong of a reminder that we are being lifted. That's what you felt. And who was it? Seema sent a song about the rising up, and that's what Francis was playing to that. On the way when I was just arriving today here, you were playing that rising up song of a little white boy and a little black boy hugging, and then just running down the sidewalk in glee together with the song of rising up.
Yeah, no time to waste.
No time to waste. That's you, Kenneth. No time to waste. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then maybe we can go to Barbara, because Barbara, I mentioned it yesterday. It was so beautiful, such a beautiful witness and expression, because like Kenneth talked about, he had certain reactions when he was an adolescent, and it was that way. But it sounds like you were just sharing with us that you've been quite open to different pathways and symbols that have reached you you mentioned White Eagle, and you mentioned others of just friends, people you've been associated with, and then these symbols of the mist coming, which was kind of more of an abstract kind of symbol of the mind. And then you've had some amazing experiences of starting to connect with this presence we'll call Jesus, not necessarily a historical figure, but maybe you can just share a little bit of that journey, because I think that almost dovetails with what Kenneth was talking about. Because for many of us, I had the same reactions when I was part of the Christian church. There were certain things that my heart would light up with, and there were other things that I thought, that doesn't resonate, and I don't think Jesus meant that. And I'm sure many of us could relate, but yours is more from an eclectic approach, which I think is really valuable when we start to go into this idea that we're looking for the presence of light in our mind, and yet we have these associations with different historical characters throughout history, and there's a part of our mind that wants to be open-minded, but we almost feel embarrassed or guilty or shameful around just picking a few symbols that we relate to and resonate with. So maybe you can share with all of us about your journey.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you, Francis. Um, yeah, I didn't grow up in Christianity. I grew up in a mixed race family, and my father's people were very staunch Roman Catholics, and my mother's people were Lutherans, actually. But we didn't grow up in Christianity, and our parents were very clear, like, we can't figure it out, and whatever you decide you want to believe, we'll be happy with you. And I, like, in my childhood, yeah, there were occasions that I was in church. But as a child, I was sitting in church and I was listening to what the minister or the priest was going on about. And inside, as a child, I go, that's not true. Like, where did that come from? I just knew what was being said wasn't true. And then, I grew into teenage years and becoming a woman, and I grew into political activism and being a feminist and environmental activist, and very passionate about indigenous existences and what the church did to what people in the United States call Native Americans, what in Canada we call Indians or First Nations people, and that whole history of what was done and the devastation of residential school. And I'm a product of, I'm an intergenerational survivor of residential school, and just having this deep hatred for Christianity and wanting nothing to do with it. So in early recovery in the 1984, I started my recovery from alcoholism. And I had this experience when I first did my third step prayer in earnest. I had this deep experience with the light. And I was so shame-based. I went, holy crap, I haven't been a good person. I'm going to get zapped here. But I surrendered and I experienced what it is, a loving God, because I wasn't zapped, or I was zapped with love and light and grace. And that was incredible. So then it was like, so what is this light? I wanted to understand what this light was. And people in AA, different people were telling me what this light was. And the born again Christian said, that's Jesus. That's Jesus. And I'm like, I don't know here. I don't know. Maybe Jesus. So I did in early recovery, tried out the Christianity trip. But I just didn't buy organized religion in any form. I wanted nothing to do with it. And so my life led me to walk what people call the red road. And I was walking that road in deep devotion, for most of my adult life, until I found again the Course in Miracles. But that path, the red road, took me to the path of the Sundance, and such transcendent experiences when I was sundancing. But I could never sustain it, because I believed in my mind, like, I thought there was a way out with the 12 steps, because AA was founded by white men. And I said, well, yeah, you guys are sick, and you guys can't have resentments, but surely I can. So I harbored grievance, and I didn't really deal with all my resentments, all my grievance. And so I could never sustain whatever I had accomplished through the Sundance. I would crash, like I would come back from Sundance and just crash. and go, what the fuck is this life, you know? So when the Course in Miracles was saying to me, it's all in my mind, I was going, no fucking way. I didn't create colonialism. I didn't create the Indian Act. I didn't create residential school. No fucking way. I'm not owning that shit. And I was like, when I first was exposed to your ministry, I was just, rage. Like I couldn't hide it. I couldn't suppress it. It was just coming out and out. And I was going, what is happening to me? I had such murderous thoughts. I wanted to kill. I wanted to come into community. But I thought, I can't. I will rip those white ladies to fucking shreds. I don't trust myself. How much I hate. I just, I was invited in. Judah said, why don't you come in? And I said, I'm too sick. Like, no friggin' way. Like, for your own protection. The men, I would have been okay with the men, but the women, I just would have chewed up to bits. So, but then there was this in the Course in Miracles, like very Christian language. God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. It's like, holy fuck, here we go again, the Trinity. Like, I don't like this shit. And it would just piss me right off. Sometimes I'd say, okay, Jesus of the Course in Miracles. Jesus of the Course in Miracles. Got nothing to do with what people did in his name. But I've had so many experiences in my life where Jesus has come to me. I've seen him. He's been in my living room. He's been in my bathroom when I'm having a bath. It's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, get away from me. Like, get the fuck away from me was my whole attitude. But then I'd feel guilty. How dare you say, get the fuck away from Jesus? Like, what is wrong with you? So finally, it just happened. Like, it happened. I wanted to come and be in community. I was ready. I wanted to be in Mexico. I wanted to go to Utah. I wanted to experience that. And then what the fuck, COVID happens and we're all locked down in Canada and the borders are shut. And that was so beautiful because I couldn't run away anymore. I couldn't run away and not face my grievance. And then it was like, okay, dude, Jesus, like, I don't know why you're around me. Like, why are you in my mind? Why am I seeing you all the time? Why are you talking to me all the time? Why can I hear you? Like, what is going on here? And then I went, well, wow, you're not very open-minded. You're open to everybody else, but not Jesus. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, just open up your mind, And so I went, okay, Jesus, I don't get this. And who I see in my head isn't the historical Jesus pictures that you see in churches. It's a different being. He has a very elongated face, but it's him. I know it's this being, Jesus. And so I just quit fighting him. And he has taken charge of my life. He's taken charge of every aspect of my life. I am not in control anymore. He even takes charge of my computer. He does shit on my computer. Like, it's like, wow, look at what you're doing here. And he has brought me to mighty companions who, it's exactly what I need right now. Like, I didn't see the movie Alice in Wonderland. I didn't read that book. But my sense about going down the rabbit hole is when I join with mighty companions now, it's like, let's not run away from this dirt shit that's inside me. With Jesus, with the light, let's take a look at what's there. And it's not really pleasant, but it's so fast with Jesus. And I hold his hand and he shows me I really fucking like resentment. Oh man, it's like a pig pen, man. I love it. I love being self-righteous. I love hating people. I love not me, who I really am as a light being, but this person that became Barbara, And so he's healing my mind. no mighty companion is healing my mind. Living miracles, you're not healing my mind. He is, or that, whatever that is. I don't know what the heck it is, and I don't have to understand it. I just have to go with it, go with the flow, and just go with it. But yeah, he's got me, and I couldn't fuck this thing up no matter how I tried. He's got me, so he's got me. And I'm learning to trust him. And he does not judge me at all. Even when I say, hey, dude, get the fuck out of my bathroom, like I'm having a bath. He's just showing me what love really is. So who would have thought? Like, I would never be where I am today had I come to Mexico and lived in community. Where I was at, I would have been scrapping with everybody, and you know. So it's so perfect in being in isolation, really, being locked down here. It's just like such a tremendous gift. But I've always been curious about this mist experience that I've had since I became open to Jesus. I've had this experience where the mist has come in and the whole room is enveloped in mist, and it's like, what is this? And the mist has been with me all my life, and it always felt like such a blessing. Like it felt like it was a doorway into something so beautiful. Even though people told me, don't you dare go there, you're going to regret it, it always felt so beautiful. But since now I'm really looking at my doo-doo and asking Jesus to heal my mind, there's more and more light. So most of my day, it's like I'm above the shitstorm of the world, and but there are some times I'll wake up in the middle of the night and there's a grievance, and I'll wake up in the morning and I'll go, I don't fucking want to do spirit. I don't want to join. And so for the day, I'll be enjoying the pig pen. And I've noticed that on those days, those are the days when I see the mist again, and it's not so light anymore. So I was asking you, like, am I seeing it right? Like, as I face all the denials of my own divinity, and I ask Jesus to heal my mind, and like, eventually it'll all be light, right? And it won't be mist anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Barbara, because I'll talk a little bit about the mist today for all of us, so we're all a little more aware of the mists. Jesus talks about this in the Course, where he basically it's a very profound passage. I even posted it recently on Facebook, where he's talking about a whole world that you perceive, he said, arises from these cloud patterns and these mists. And that it's like mountains that can even go up past the clouds and past the mist are there. And as you're journeying, when you're looking at the mist, this is the part that human beings are not aware of, but you are. You might say that the human race just perceives the gross perceptual world, what seems to be the world of images of this world, oceans and stars and mountains and people and so forth. But there's a thought system, a belief system that's underneath the gross perceptual world, and it's where the mists are. So everything from like colonialism to all the things that you perceived, we'll just call them the tragedies of the world. Most of us could just agree with that kind of a label. They seem to be tragedies just perpetually throughout history. That's the projected world that's coming from the mist. And I had a woman who's a singer from Australia that just wrote to me, and her son was just saying to her recently, like, what do you believe, Mom? Like, what is your spirituality? Because he's done some drugs, and he's actually looking at the world and the news and just going, I don't know what to make of it. Like, this isn't good. This is not good. And so she wrote me the whole letter on Facebook Messenger that she sent to him. She said, I'm going to send it to you, David, because the Course and you and Ken Wapnick are kind of helping guide me. But she kind of, in her own words, put out about, this world is messed up, son. And I used to tell you when I was younger that I was fearless. When I was younger, I was fearless. It's not the truth. I wasn't fearless. I was in hurt and pain, and I'm only now, as an adult, beginning to face the how messed up my mind was and how messed up the world is. And so, when you're talking, it's reminding me of these myths. This is the unconscious mind. This is the dream that you dream in secret, and that's why Jesus calls it the dream that you dream in secret, because it's out of awareness, and the human race isn't aware. You never hear the myths. The myths don't get any headlines. The CNN Live. We are now seeing the projections of the myths today, and it looks like burning down buildings and riots breaking out across the country of the United States and everything. They never include the myths part because it's unconscious. But I think Jesus is just showing you the mist, because when he talks about these cloud patterns and mist in the Course, he says that the whole world you perceive arises from these mists, and the mists are so thin that if you dropped a button, it couldn't even stop the fall of a button. He's talking about them as mist because there's no solidity to them. But the projected world that the human beings perceive through the five senses seems very solid indeed. When people read something like, I am not a body, I am free, I am still as God created me, sometimes they'll just take their hands and they'll just go, yes, well, okay, I'm going to try to trust this, but seems pretty solid to me. The world through the five senses seems extremely solid, but very large too, very large and solid. So I think that now that you've started to see that there's a light under the mist, that's another huge metaphor for the mind, that there is this brilliant light that's behind the veil. And the veil are these cloud patterns, belief patterns, and thought patterns that produce the projected world. So you're getting, kind of to use that metaphor of the projector, you're getting back to the projector room, because those mists are those shadows of the film, and then you're actually aware that there is a light now. You've made contact with that light. And so the mists are just symbolic, and just like for you, Jesus can appear. These mists, I think, that have been with you all your life, and just kind of filling up a room, is the light has been using that metaphor to say, keep coming. It can look a little murky, it can look like it's not clear, but you have made contact with the light, and now it's also good that it's the light because you don't have to put necessarily names to it or try to figure out the symbols. Symbols are just representations. They're just there. It's a way for the light to relate to us in a way that we can behold and perceive. So thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it was such a beautiful expression, and really your question about the mist is really what is not seen by human beings, but it's truly underneath. Everything that is perceived is rising from those mists. And none of us were really raised to talk about our feelings, our thoughts, our beliefs. None of my dinner time conversations with my parents and my sister had to do with these thoughts and beliefs and feelings. And then even at church, when I would go to church, I would sit there like you, and I would listen to the sermons, and I was pretty bored, and I was like, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. Same thing. I was going through the very same things, and yet, even during summer Bible school, when we had all this extra time, nobody was talking about perceptions and thoughts and beliefs and consciousness and what's going on in the mind. Maybe over when Paramahansa Yogananda grew up, they were talking at that community about perceptions and beliefs because of those deep traditions in India, but not in my United Church of Christ denomination or during Bible school. We just weren't. Teachers would barely touch on those topics, and so it's probably why I was a bit bored. I didn't see how relevant that was to my experiences. But now, I think you not only see the relevance of the symbols that you're seeing, but you have, like Kenneth, you have the faith. You have great faith because there's some very strong passion to heal. Regardless of what seems to be Barbara or what seems to be the construct of these very intense emotions, these attack thoughts, you're onto it now. You're onto the mist and you're onto the light. And you're in the tractor beam with the Christ light now. So thank you for sharing it and articulating. I love how transparent you always are, because that's beautiful. This is a digital community, really. Forget about Utah and Mexico. This is truly a community of the mind, and your transparency and Kenneth's are, we had poster children. You are like our poster children for no people pleasing and no private thoughts. You are like right out there in front. You're on the poster. So thank you. My heart goes out and thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. And Francis, you see something there? Have you zoomed in on something from another?
Yeah, I just love those miracles and testimonies, because it's really that's really what we're living for. We have our vision beholds either problems and judgments and attacks in the world as we call upon based on that, or these amazing miracles that transcend, it just feels like it's world apart. It's not that. And, just be able to behold that, to share it, is just it's a gift. So, yeah, thank you so much, Barbara. And I was also mentioning Emily. I was reading your prayer this morning, and that really stood out for me, because it is one of those prayers that feels so miraculous and heartfelt. It actually is a miracle as well as a prayer, because it cuts through all this misery and victimhood. So I want to read that for everybody. This is Emily's prayer. It is the first time I attend one of your retreats, and I'm very happy to join this wonderful weekend. I feel very inspired by your teachings, the sharings, and beautiful movie, and already found so many answers. Although it's the last day of the retreat, I would still like to share my prayer just as a way of reaching out and strengthening my intention. My prayer is to keep committed to a process of inner healing I'm experiencing. I'm diagnosed with a form of cancer and confronted with a very insecure future. Aren't we all really? Bracket. Although my ego thinks it's one of the worst case scenarios, and I'm of course both guilty of being sick and a victim, I feel that in a way it's the best thing that happened to me. My view of what life and death really are has changed completely, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, I discovered life and love where I least expected it. I wish to let go of my concerns about death and be able to stay connected to inner joy. Most of all, I wish to honor my desire to deeply connect with others on our journey, on our holy journey. I pray for the courage of trusting in Jesus so I can let go of my doubts and fear that I will forget again. I pray for the deeper understanding that I'm spirit and not body or form. Thank you very much for the inspiring weekend. With love, Emily. Oh.
So precious. So precious. Yeah. This is like, your prayer is such an opening for everyone on the retreat, because it seems like when there seems to be something like a diagnosis, it's almost like bringing something for us to look at closer, much more closer in our mind, and it sounds like you've been using this to propel your inner journey, because everything that seems to be in the world, it can be taken one of two ways. The ego will try to take whatever it is and run with it to promote its belief system, and then the Holy Spirit is right there to take whatever seems to be presented and then to go much deeper. And it's interesting that you would bring this up too, because I've really been aware, Jesus has really been focusing with me on this idea that it seems like, as an ultimate kind of fear outcome with the belief system of being a body, that's like the ego's ace card, is the death card, or the sickness card, and then, as I say, to the ego, the worst form of sickness is death. But it's holding that out and saying, this proves there is no God. This proves there is no love. This proves that there is no continuity. It's always using the symptoms and the death card as this source of fear, really to keep the mind bound to the ego. And what Jesus has been saying to me recently is those that seem to believe they're in this world, they don't really see how strongly they call to death. At some point, he's talking about this world and those of this world as death worshippers. And yet he'll come back to saying there's like a huge fear of death that's generated. And he's saying it's not so. It's the fear of knowing who you are. It's the fear of the light. It's the fear of redemption, he calls it. It's the fear of salvation that the ego has really masqueraded and covered over with this entire projection that seems to say that the body is what's real. The mind isn't. The ego says there is no such thing as a mind. You got a brain. Everything's connected to the body now. Rewire the brain and exercise the body and find the cancer cells and all the treatments with white blood cells and all the things that the whole medical model, everything is part of an intricate defense that says the body is real, the body is your home, and isn't it just too bad that it will get sick and die? The ego gets its violin out. Oh, too bad. You're frail, you're weak, you're vulnerable, you're not empowered. And the ego doesn't teach us that there is a God except to make up a fake God, a punishing God, or something that fits in with its old scheme, that somehow you've done terrible things and you'll be punished. So it's part of quite an elaborate scheme to maintain guilt and for the ego to maintain itself. And your transparency and your prayer is like, I am not going to buy this. I don't care how pervasive, I don't care how far-reaching is the evidence for the lie. I am not going to use what I'm experiencing as a justification for the lie. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to heal, like I can do with anything that seems to arise. So it's so beautiful that this is your prayer, and I actually was sharing. I just read it this morning. I was on another call this morning, I was talking, and my friend was going through some body symptoms and some pains, and I shared a glimpse of this, and her eyes just got real big, full of hope, almost like, whoa, see it correctly, see it differently, and let your heart, already what you've shared has been used already in one conversation with me where their eyes got real big, because that was just what they needed to hear to see, oh yeah, I need to see it aright. And I also shared that I'm over the years I was fond of doing these 6-week retreats in Mallorca, where I get a bunch of friends to come together. We rent a villa or a couple villas on the island of Mallorca, and I would show up the first week or so. They would say, okay, you're in the kitchen and you'll do this and that. What? I'm in the kitchen, I can't cook. Just trust. Holy Spirit's got it. You'll do this, you're going to watch the yard. And then they'd get together, and then I would just be there meditating by the pool, and then I got to show movies, metaphysical movies, every single night for 6 weeks of just me sharing all my joy, letting the Holy Spirit come through with all the insights, all the interpretation, all the commentary and everything. And we had one, I think it was the last one we did, where we were over in Mallorca. It was actually a woman who had met me in Ireland who said she had 3 houses on the same grounds, and why don't I've been asking Jesus, I've been saying, I give you my property to use for your purposes, and 5 years you don't use my property. So I said, well, okay, we'll do it now then. And she said, so I went down and we did a 6-week retreat there on her property, and there was a woman that came there that she opened up shared in her heart that she had been diagnosed with cancer. That was the first 6-week retreat where one of the participants said, I've been diagnosed with cancer. That was at the beginning, and then with us and all of our movies and everything that happened in those 6 weeks, she left there in remission. She went home and got tested again, and she said, the cancer's gone. And I thought, well, yeah, I don't think that belief can stand 6 weeks of light, just of giving yourself over to the joy and the freedom and the happiness, because everything is a decision in mind. And I like the idea too that we have the gift of vision, we can give that away. It's a decision, and in eternity there are no decisions, because in oneness there's nothing to decide between. But in time, the Spirit can use what the ego made. The ego made up this thing called decision. It's unknown in heaven. But since the ego made it, the Holy Spirit and Jesus, they take the concept and they say, now let's use it to teach you, through teaching and learning, that you can decide your state of mind. Heaven takes the form of a decision because you believe in decision now, so we're going to use this power of decision for heaven, to reach heaven. Even though it's unknown in heaven, we're going to use what the ego made to take you back. So I feel like that's what this is all about. These online retreats are here for us to be shown the power of decision in our own mind. It's like a reverberation or a slight reflection of creation in heaven. And now that we've got this to deal with, then let's really use it. Let's really let the Holy Spirit use it to take us into happiness.
Yeah, and I have the privilege to read all of your questions and prayers together, and I just see the interconnectedness of everything, and even sometimes yourself, when you read it out, you answer it at the end of the email, and sometimes the theme come up, sometimes one person's question is answered by another. It's just amazing that it just shows me that the answer and the miracles are already given, and our function is to give so that we know we have it. It's like, Emily, what you're doing here, without probably thinking or knowing it, your attitude is the gift. Your attitude is what you're teaching and is what is the miracle. And I really feel that is an answer to quite a few questions around even our function here. Because Andy Page at the beginning of our pile of questions here, he actually asked, my question is around function and getting clear on it. How do you know what your true function is and if you are fulfilling it? Hi, Andy. Should I be looking for it, or will it be made obvious when I feel peaceful? And when something feels inspiring, but when you move towards it and you're unable to do it, is that personal inspiration or a form of resistance? And also there are quite a few questions about the movie yesterday afternoon, because the guy was in such a miraculous state of mind, and the way that when he was in that state of mind, the behaviors or there's a lot of questions around that. But I somehow, when I read Emily's prayer, I thought this is our function. Honestly, the function is so far beyond what we can zoom down to a particular form. Because when I read your question, Andy, it's more about, do I know what I'm doing is fulfilling the function Jesus gives to me? Or am I wasting my time? Of how do I know I'm not, I'm on the right track? But when I read Emily's prayer, I thought this attitude of saying, this love is where I can tap into, and I am going to tap into it now, regardless of the situation. And I'm going to carry that attitude to meet sickness, meet whatever situation. That is truly the function.
Yeah, that's it. Andy, it's so beautiful that you brought that up too, because I can see when I read through Emily's prayer, it's really a prayer for healing and wholeness. When I read through your questions, your question is about my function. Whether we call that forgiveness or awakening or atonement or whatever, it's really the same as Emily's prayer. It's a prayer for healing. I'm thinking of one line in the Course where Jesus says, to heal is to make happy. Wow, to heal is to make happy. There's a workbook lesson where Jesus says, my happiness and my function are one. So if you just take the word function completely out, like let Jesus get the scissors out and he's going to come to your mind, it's like, okay, I'm going to remove a word from your mind now. It's function. You're spinning a little bit with these words. So I'm gonna take it out. I'm gonna do a little dissection, and I'm gonna surgically remove function from your mind, so that as if you've never heard that word before. And here I'm going to put happiness in there, because if my happiness and my function are one, he should be able to easily put happiness wherever function was showing up in the mind. He's going to put happiness. Because I have, like so many, Kenneth was talking, and Francis and Greg and myself and so forth, and you know how we really are into the miracle as a collaboration, and like you're part of coming to the community. Oh, you just witnessed to all of us such dedication, such devotion, such presence with allowing the Spirit to channel through Andy and what Andy's skills and abilities, and come through in what we typically in the community call functions, collaborative functions and joining and connecting, just giving our heart to it that way. And then some really big mystical experiences come where you start to go into an experience that is very happy, very vast, very profound, way beyond whatever that word function used to mean or used to believe. It's almost like you can feel the happy, like whoa, happy, wow, that is happy. And then the ego is like, not so fast. Don't think you're getting too happy too fast, and you're getting out of my clutches. I've had you for a millennium in my clutches. Oh, my pretty. Don't think that you can just go and get so happy so fast. It's like, it's quite concerned. And then this is where you start to see some of these old ideas of function start to come back, and then the mind starts to question and say, what about my function now? Jesus is like, happy is your function now. If you're asking the question, then somehow the ego is trying to come in with the mists that Barbara talked about and cover over that light and cover over that happiness and that expansiveness with the mists, this unconscious mist. So I remember I had calls when I would be in Utah. I'd call down, and sometimes Lisa would just go into a room and she'd be watching like videos and dancing around the room and getting happier and happier and happier, and so happy that she was just in her room, and just like the whole universe she was experiencing the happiness of the whole universe. And then she would get this doubt thought about, am I in function? And then as soon as she'd wonder if she was in function, she'd start to be worried about how happy she was, and she'd think the police would show up. She would actually call me up and she'd say, I think the police are going to show up. And I'd say, why? And she said, because I'm actually getting so happy, and I think it's illegal. I'm getting illegally happy, and I'm sure the police are going to come or something. Or I'm sure I'm going to get kicked out of the community, or I'm sure something's going to happen that's going to be disastrous. Because why? Because you're so happy. So it would take me to say, when she would say, okay, what should I do? And I would just say, your joy is everything. Your joy is everything. And then she would start to relax. It's almost like, I'm going to talk to David and he's going to tell me all the things I'm not doing and everything. And then I would, after she'd tell her whole story about fear of the police, and I'd say, no, your joy is everything. Your happiness is everything. Your happiness is for the whole universe. There's no world apart from your mind. So if you're joyful and you're happy, that must mean that's your gift to the whole universe, because there is no universe apart from you. And that's why Jesus says, salvation of the world depends on me. That's why Jesus says, you are what the world has been waiting for. You. The kingdom of heaven is within you. The word within is absolutely unnecessary. The kingdom of heaven is you. So that's it. It's just allow yourself to feel that happiness and that love, and let that be a focal point, because when this function idea come in, the ego is trying to hijack it. The ego is trying to hijack that word. It's trying to read misty meanings into that somehow, and then it will put it back into striving and somehow, like, I've got to work out my salvation by doing the right things. You see how sneaky it is? It's like once it gets its toenail in the door, then it's going to try to use the old guilt trip. Am I doing the right things? Am I doing enough? And Jesus is just there, happy. All I want for you is happy. All I want for you. And then that's why we do these gatherings, because the ego will try to even invent its own pathway to happiness. It's really a sneaky little puff of nothingness, because it has to keep trying to keep the mind's allegiance, so it tries to invent its own outcomes. If I do this, I'll be happy. If I do enough of that, if I have to do the right happy things. You see how sneaky it is. It's always trying to get the mind caught up in the projection instead of the simple, graceful presence that's here. So we love you, Andy, and you're right with us. You're right here with us, so close, closer than the air that we breathe. You're here. You're here. Thank you. I love the angles, all the different angles of the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any more questions, or shall we open it up and
Yeah.
go
maybe.
live? Let's go live. We want to hear what's on your heart. And thank you, Katerina, yesterday. What a precious expression. So loving, so transparent. We're all tickled by these beautiful expressions because they're so... I could see your face, even though I was giving my talk yesterday for 2.5 hours, I could see the little... And I saw arms going up. I said, whoa! Every time I look up, there's like a cheerleader in there. And then boom, there you are. You come up on the big screen, and oh, that was Katerina cheering on the whole talk on open-mindedness. So thank you. So why don't we, Eric, when we open it up, if people have expressions, maybe expressions about the movie. I know, Richard, you had asked a question, and Stephanie, you had asked some questions about the ending of the movie. And then I know a lot of you, that was a beautifully given movie. I also want to give a beautiful shout out to Kristen Lorraine, who emailed us a movie when I kept saying over and over, God help us, God help us. You emailed me, although my phone was off when we were in our prayer meeting, so it didn't get to me till yesterday afternoon after the movie was on. But thank you. Your movie suggests maybe we can use it on a Wednesday for Lucy, because Lucy, we're all like, Kristen, Lucy. We get it like 3 hours later.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's the answer, Lucy. But we, Kenneth really we all felt that's just the one that dropped in at the time. So now we know some of you have really enjoyed that movie. There was a lot of emotions that came up around Jeff Bridges and that movie. So thank you, Kristen, though, for that suggestion, because that we felt it. We all felt your prayer. So let's open it up and see what we've got here today, Eric.
Okay. I'll go to Richard first. Go ahead, Richard.
Oh, hey guys. Hey David. Hey Francis.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Richard.
Yeah, I had a question about the movie. The ending was really interesting for me yesterday, and it made me think about looking at my life and kind of how I'm going along now. I can definitely see that anger comes up less. It's like a smoother ride these days. But I kind of look back at my life, and there's certain kind of peaks of like where I've just felt blasted open. And I feel like I'm kind of missing that a little bit. And that was, the movie kind of showed me that, because he's, throughout the movie, he's in this kind of mystical space, and it's like he's at peace. And then at the end, he can, and he's not people pleasing, and you can see other characters are he's not jiving with, or they're upset with him. And then he comes back at the end, and the strawberry, where it didn't touch him, now it does touch him. It seems to get him, and he's calling for his wife to save him. There was this sort of shift that I'm trying to understand. Like he's sort of having this, in a way, he's leaving the world, and he's in this mystical place for a lot of the movie, and then he seems to come back in a way, but at the same time has this further cracking open, like when he's lying on the floor with his wife, and he's just laughing, and he's just having this huge, just his heart splitting open, and I guess I kind of feel like I'm missing that, and so I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Your question, it kind of dovetails a little bit with what Stephanie wrote, and then there was another one. I'm not sure if it was Jeanette. Yeah, it was Jeanette too, because Jeanette was actually watching the movie and relating a little bit more with the wife. And when he came back and was in that state, and then and her asking questions, like her desire to ask what's going on, like, please tell me, that you would have in an intimate relationship where it's like, please, things are not the same with you, and I want to know what's going on. Almost like she was saying, how are you perceiving or looking at the world? Because also there was a threat in the self-concept, like, you're spending more time with this other boy than you are with your own son. And then, when he came out and just no private thoughts, no people pleasing, he meets the woman that he is so drawn to. He said, I've felt a love for her like I've never felt before. That's not the best thing through the wife lens to hear. You like to hear that said to you if you're the wife. I feel a love for you like I've never felt before. But when it's spoken to about another woman, then something starts to teeter in there. And maybe you can talk about that too, Francis. It's like that we always are experiencing that this world is just an opportunity, a device to help us undo and unlearn the roles and the egoic identity that Barbara was talking about. She feels like there's Barbara and there's hatred in there, and like you were just sharing, maybe now for the Richard character and your experiences in mine, it's like smoother, less anger. Seems to be what seems to be like a progress, like a softening, maybe more of a gentleness coming in, and more of a trust, a growing trust that's coming with spirit. And then it's just the question is about that interpretation.
Yeah. It's a great movie to for the open-mindedness, because in terms of the form, when we were talking about a journey to mysticism or to this divine presence, and we use the symbols of the world, or have Jesus or Spirit use the symbol for us, then we see the form shift and change so much without us being able to really understand what it really means from our frame of mind. So the way is, for me, even in my journey, I feel it's interesting, because when I was at the beginning of the journey, there was a removal of myself from my traditional mother-daughter role with my mom, because, I moved over and I started to devote myself completely to this way of living. Then my mom would think from the perspective that's not the daughter that really loves her, because it's not going toward the path that the mother wants. But gradually there is such an undoing, and I actually want to share this experience I just had with her maybe a month ago, when she texted me a lot about, why don't you reply, are you okay? South America is now the center of pandemic now, write back to me, tell me you're okay, tell me. So I was thinking, wow, I just have a lot of seeming demand, and there was a feeling of wanting to connect. But how? So I just thought I would call her, but I want an experience that feels so meaningful, and I prayed. So when we started the call, she was asking me that questions about coronavirus and how is it going. And I said, look, I really have a sincere question I want to ask you. And that got her attention. She's like, okay, what is it? So I said, Mom, you have such a life experience. You're born right before Second World War. You've gone through Cultural Revolution, Great Famine. Now you have coronavirus. I want to know the one piece of wisdom that you can give me, of the kind of attitude that you would like to have if you were to go through this changeable world. And she was like, it was really hard for her. We couldn't put it out for the longest time. She was like, okay, I will not marry this guy. I was like, no, not that kind of advice. I would leave China earlier. No, not that kind of advice. Everything has to stay the exact same way, but is there an attitude that you would change? And after a while, it was like not hitting anything, but very end, she's like, why don't you tell me? I said, I can't tell you what advice you would give me, right? But maybe something like you wouldn't take things too seriously. She said, yeah, I wouldn't. I said, no, it has to come from you. Be specific. Then finally she said this. She said, okay, I have this one piece of advice. Only focus on other people's shining spot, because that's the only thing that makes you happy. I was like, what? You mean you can choose what you perceive? You mean vision is the gift? You mean that is what you learned? That you actually can choose to be happy if you focus only on the shining spot of others? But I know in that moment, she didn't even know that existed in her. But through our joining, it was such a gift, because I feel she was buzzing on the other end of the phone when that realization came to be verbalized, when she realized this wealth of wisdom that existed in her. And when I could meet that, and we were both like in this depth of joining that was really not mother and daughter. And inside of me, I was bowing to her as if she was my guru. And I was like, thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for teaching me that vision is my gift. And she's like, oh, I have no wisdom. I said, no, you have. But then after that, I was like, talking about this mother-daughter relationship is not taught by this world. When we grew up, this relationship that we knew as taught by this world was nothing satisfying for us. And we couldn't seem to shake that. We couldn't, it was still. But then once we are letting the Spirit to show us how to relate, suddenly it's a healing for her, but also for me, because I completely shift who she is in my mind. I really experience vision is my gift. If I hold her to be, I have a choice. How I see her, I have a choice. But that is the fruit of this inner journey. So in that way, how is the symbol leaving, not leaving? It's a question around, earlier, what is our function and what is our priority, and just let the Spirit use the symbols. So
yeah, that's beautiful. Because Richard, your question is very much like Gertie's question. She wrote in too, because your question, I sense, is about the mirroring. Like when you are going through this journey and you're going through this healing, and then you still have some people, a couple people will say, that are saying, to me, you're distant. You're just distant. They're not saying, you're wise, and they're not calling you, like a wise Richard or something. They're saying you're distant. And then your question really is about the mirroring, just like about the movie, okay, our main character, Jeff Bridges' character, he's kind of mystical state, and then he comes back and he's in there with his wife and he says, what? What did the character say? Can you save me? And you're like watching the movie going, what are you asking her to save you for at this point? It's like, come on, you've been in a mystical state. You're like, the plane's going down and you're just calm as can be, and now you're asking your wife, can you save me? And then the thing with the strawberry, and then it wasn't, you pointed out, I think, until she looked at him, until she reacted, he didn't have any reaction to the strawberry until she looked at him with concern, with wifely concern, with maybe I could lose the fear of losing my husband concern, with fear. He seem to mirror that. And Gertie is asking the same question, because she's saying, David, you talk about this mirroring, and then sometimes you say it's not a mirroring. So she was like saying, what's that? So I'll give you a line from Jesus in the Course. Your brother is the mirror in which you see the reflection of yourself, as long as the perception lasts. Oh, catch that last part. Your brother is the mirror in which you see the reflection of yourself, comma, as long as the perception lasts. In other words, if you have an interpretation of you're distant, Richard, you're distant, you see, then that's where the concern, that's where the question arises out of the interpretation of Richard, you seem distant. Because then there's a part of your mind that's going, I want to seem loving, and I want to seem Christ-like, And well, they told Jesus a lot of things too, there seemed to be a lot of reflections 2,000 years ago, and some of them were called "crucify him." The distant thing is quite like "crucify Richard," crucify him. It was, but the point of it is the integration is. That's what our whole topic is about: open-mindedness. Open-mindedness is simply the state of non-judgment. Open-mindedness is a state of acceptance. So whatever the reflections seem to be in the movie, or your couple of friends or people saying those things, the only way we perceive those with a state of a question mark, or the state of what does that mean, is coming from our own lack of self-acceptance. In other words, the atonement is simply accepting ourselves as we are created, as the Christ. There's the Christ vision that we can give. That before Francis gets all these messages, how are you? The pandemic? Are you safe? Are you well? Da, da, da. And then she goes into prayer of okay, this is a call to communicate, and what is it that I want to communicate? What is the gift that I want to give to my brother, my sister, myself, my mother? It doesn't really matter, whatever the concepts are, it's just still that opportunity to what is the gift? Or Ari asking the question about simultaneous versus the spaghetti noodle, and then really it came down to, from Ari's whole question and that whole lesson 158, it was all about, I have a gift. I have a gift. I am a gift. And I need to focus, to use the word like your mother, when you said, what about focus? I need to focus on the gift. And I need to focus on the giving of the gift that I am. Because that strengthens it. That takes us out of this idea of interpersonal relationships, or teachers and students, or spiritual devotees. I mean, even the idea of spiritual devotees or avatars or whatever, it still doesn't quite hit the mark if you consider that the mark is the light. The mark is the light. And as soon as we say enlightened person, there are, even when people say they're enlightened people, because the light, it's all about the light, and enlightenment is about experiencing the light. And that light really can't be attached to just a person here or there in history or in time and space, or to several, or to many. It's so vast, it's so beyond the veil that when we try to attach it, then we're still not reaching the last part of that sentence from Jesus. Your brother, your sister, is the mirror of the perception of yourself as long as the perception lasts. But if I have a gift, the vision gift, well, that's the card I want to play. Because I want to use that with anything or anyone that I seem to think of or come in contact with. I want to reach into my heart and play that Christ vision card. Like if it's a card game, and you're holding the ace of hearts. You're holding the ace of hearts, and you're just waiting the card game. Like, here comes someone. Okay, here they come. I'm going to play my Christ vision card, because that's not the card the ego wants you to play. In fact, the ego's saying, choose anything from your deck, your deck of thoughts that I have in your mind. Play those cards, and then it turns into a discussion, an argument, agree, disagree. It's back to the old human condition if I'm playing one of those ego cards. But not if I play my Christ vision card. That's game over. That's as long as the perception lasts, and the ego's like, whoa, that card unifies perception. That card is the forgiveness card. That card is, you and I are the very same one. That card is, there are no opinions that can block the light of who we are together. You see? So I'm so glad you raised it. I'm so glad, Gertie, you wrote that in too, because that part about mirroring is a device to take us closer to merging with the light of who we are. The mirroring is something that's helpful to us because it shows us our thoughts, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to teach and learn. We're here to purify our minds through the device of teaching and learning. Only the ego tries to think that teaching is words and behavior, like our teacher concept when we're growing up. Mrs. So-and-so is my 5th grade teacher. Jesus is like, well, actually your mind is the classroom, and you're teaching and learning based on every thought that you hold in that mind. Wow, that's not the 5th grade. He's like, we're not in the 5th grade anymore. We're in the Christ classroom of the mind. And I'm telling you that the mirroring is only a device, temporary device, that Holy Spirit can use to take you to the big merge. And once you're in the big merge, somebody will come to you. If you're in the light and somebody comes mirroring, you're like, what's mirroring? Mirroring always implies something else. A mirror. But there's no mirrors in the light, it's just all love. So thank you. We're answering all the questions together here through these beautiful expressions.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, I'll go to Kristen next.
Oh,
Go ahead, Kristen.
hi. I thought you were going to get to me last, and maybe I wouldn't go to. Okay. So I feel like I'm in the midst from the movie of like this healing process, and part of it I feel like I woke up this morning and I had the image of I don't know if you remember the MTV logo where the little spaceman's like tethered but like floating out in space. I kind of feel like that's the image of where I am at the moment. The movie yesterday was really beautiful, and I felt like I could feel a sense of all that you had spoken of, David, of being in this Christ vision and being in this oneness. And so it kind of, that held all the way through until there was the moment as he was, I think it was as he was eating the strawberry, where he's flashing back through that very last moments on the plane ride, and he's remembering his partner reaching for him, and remembering the look in his partner's eyes that was so desperate, like, don't leave me. And he's just in this calm, clear vision, going with his guidance to be with this boy. And that was the hook for me. That was the place of, like, feeling both my own, desperation reaching, but also guilt, the guilt of feeling like, of leaving people behind, and the sense of confusion. And so then the whole rest of the movie, like when he is sort of dying and comes back, I couldn't really understand, like Richard was saying, like, I don't understand what just happened. Like, I was with it the whole way. And so as I was going to sleep last night, and also thinking of what Greg and Kenneth were sharing, and just feeling even what Barbara just shared, of feeling the love, like the experience of love so profoundly, that they were expressing and feeling like, I don't know that I've let that in. Like, there's this fear of that love. And so I was asking, as I was lying in bed before sleep, the Holy Spirit to help me understand, like, help me heal whatever this is. Why am I so hooked by this? And I was expecting and kind of asking for Jesus to come before me. And instead, I got this experience, like, right up in my face, of this, what I can only describe as a fallen angel, like almost like a gargoyle, which I don't have a Christian background. And so I don't, the original sin stories is like just a literature to me. So it's not, but I could feel it as if it was me. Like I was so identified with it. Like it was in the mind, and it was so distorted and so intense. And all I could do was ask to understand, because I'd already felt the Holy Spirit with me. So I wanted to feel what it was feeling. And the word that came was evil, which is also not a word that I've really ever used. But it was like, it was so deep and so intense. And I could feel that it was murderous, like it was hatred. And then I had this fear thought, like, this is me, like, this is what I am. And the Holy Spirit again, like, it was all changing very fast, and it became a cartoon, like the hatred was a cartoon character, and the murderous person, and then the person on whom the hatred is enacted, it just all became a cartoon. And then something else, lifted away. And then I was shown the final scene of the movie again in the mind. And as the partner was like reaching, and as Jeff Bridges was moving away, I could feel that they're one, like nobody left anybody. It was like everything became unified, and it was, I can't even explain it, but it was like there's no leaving, and there's no even movement, and there's nothing that's even happening. And it was the guilt in the mind, and this belief that's like so core of being this fallen angel or something. And so I feel like I'm this little like astronaut right now, kind of like floating out there. It's like I still don't know what the love would be, but I also don't feel like I'm that. Like, even looking in the mirror this morning, I didn't look the same. Like, I don't see the same now, because something about that guilt, it was like it was like you were saying about the mist. It was like seeing the cartoon. It just passed through. by just letting it, I don't know, just also what you said earlier, like looking upon the full extent of it, I feel like was a moment that occurred that it's like I'm not in the rabbit hole, but I'm also not so I'm not so believing it. It's like the edges of the mind that the ego was holding, those are like pixelating or something, you know? They're just
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's very descriptive, and I think it's probably a lot of ones on our online retreat will be able to really relate to the way you were able to articulate that, because I don't think everyone else doesn't really know that you actually had written in a beautiful prayer where you had written in a couple dreams that you had, where the characters in the dream were taken over by this song. This song became so strong that it took over their words, and it took over their actions, and it took over their functionality. And after a couple of those dreams where the song just literally took over the characters, then you started to look at the dreams, and there was some uncomfortable feelings, some thoughts that came up. I think one of the thoughts that came up is, yeah, God breaks people's lives apart, or human lives apart. There it is. The ego has ordered false perception in terms of these concepts and roles, and it's defined everything. It's defined our work, our time, our partnerships. It's defined our bodies. It's defined our diets. The ego has made a world out of fragments, and it's put it together in its own way, which Jesus tells us is judgment. That's all of the learning of the world, is this learning, the good things from the bad things, and how to be a good person, and how to have a good career, and be a good partner, and a good everything, a good man, a good woman. It's like thick. It's the mist are underneath all of that self-concept image. And then you watch the movie, and it's almost like through the gargoyle, that was getting you in touch with that feeling of wrongness or evil, and doubt and self-questioning that's underneath the human identity. There's a lot of doubt under the whole construct of being a body. And then when you felt that merge, like the merge between, as the hands were parting, that there was no real parting there. That was, you were starting to glimpse like the borderland. The Course calls it the borderland. There's a borderland of thought between this world and the light. And that borderland is very strange to the human mind, because it feels, you look in the mirror, you look differently. You look around, things don't look the way they looked the day before. It seems a little strange, a little weird, a little unfamiliar, like you're in some kind of uncharted territory. And Jesus calls this the borderland. And he describes the borderland in the Course with amazing words, where he says, it seems like there are decisions still to make. You see how it's a time thing. There's still decisions to make. And yet there's some kind of a feeling like they were already made. Like there's some kind of awareness of something expansive where everything's connected. It's even beyond the decisions. The daily, we'll call them interpersonal and personal decisions. Where am I going to go? What am I going to have to eat? What am I going to wear? We're all very familiar with those little decisions, but then there's something bigger in our mind that's more relaxed. And the reason the borderland is more relaxed, it's maybe even what Richard was starting to feel more of, is because the charge is gone. The desire to try to make separate things and give them identities and names. Everything in this world is given a name, and then we have these strange associations that we make. Well, I'm in love with this person. Well, that's good, good. Yeah, you're supposed to be in love with one person. Better than two or three. Yipes, that's terrible. Just one. Okay, one piece, and the pieces love each other. And then that's part of fragmented perception, though, is the vastness starts to come, and you start to see, whoa, I'm not that piece at all, and they're not that piece. It's all, we're all the same one. Then the fear of loss is gone, the grief disappears, the fear. Like Jeanette was bringing up, Jeanette was saying could really relate to the wife, and asking the questions, and maybe she said maybe Jeff Bridges' character, maybe he couldn't even answer, because he was quiet a lot. He was not really answering a lot of questions. She was like questioning, but this state of mind goes beyond the questions and the answers. It's taking us, as Jesus would say, into an experience that transcends the fragmented world. And to the ego, that's very frightening. That's where the ego comes up with, oh yeah, God, He's the one that breaks up human lives. It's like, in some sense, the Holy Spirit has to break apart of false associations, because those little clingy associations aren't the whole, aren't the big picture. And so it's always upset when some of the parts start to get rearranged. But the prayer for healing is also the prayer of, show me the world differently. Rearrange my perception. The ego has already arranged it. Now, rearrange the perception so that it reflects the light. Give me a new way of looking at the world, that I can feel that love and connection with it all. Not just with this one piece or that one piece. Not just affiliated with the little clingy associations, but the bigger one. And I think, all of us in spiritual community, and certainly what we've gone through, Frances always says that as things in her dream world started to fall apart or disappear, that she never really got sunk by the feelings, because the purpose, like there was a greater purpose there. Like it was almost like, oh yeah, there goes that, bye. There goes this thing. The things that most people would say are key pieces of the puzzle were just falling off like chunks of an iceberg. And then because of the devotion Frances was feeling, she would like watch the chunk fall away, and there was no sense of reaching for that chunk of the iceberg. It was like, it was just all part of the plan, part of the reordering. It's like saying to God, order my thoughts. Like, my thoughts are very chaotic and disordered because of the ego, but now I invite you into my mind to, Jesus says that, you can do this in the Course, let God order your thoughts, instead of you trying to order your thoughts. Let God order your thoughts. What does that mean? Let me have the thoughts that I think with God, and let me let go of everything else that I'm not thinking with God. And then what comes from that is that there will be what Jesus calls reordered perception. To the ego, perception is selective. So when we perceive through the ego's lens of preferences and judgments, I prefer this over that. I prefer this image, this appearance over that. And that's all part of fragmented perception, where when we say reorder my thoughts, we're really saying reorder my perception of the entire cosmos and align me with the Holy Spirit and a new way of looking at the world. So I just thank you for being so articulate with that, because that's just the way you woke up this morning after that movie. That's why we showed the movie. That's why I think that movie was given to us, was just the mind to take it higher, take it. And ultimately, an open mind, we won't, none of the scenes of the movie will seem the same, because there's a feeling inside that that the whole movie was pointing us toward. And that experience was what it was all for. It wasn't for even trying to dissect, the scenes, which we've all been pretty good at dissecting the scenes. What do you think? What did that scene mean to you? Even Kenneth here, I feel it. I feel the movie. Fearless. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. And then as I'm leaving the room, oh, there's the strawberry scene. Oh, by the way, I haven't shown that movie for the longest time, but I think people are going to bring up the strawberry scene, and Kenneth was ready for it. He was right there. The spirit was all over the strawberry scene, and still it gives an opportunity for everyone who's experiencing the strawberry scene to use it, to let the spirit use it for healing. Yeah, so good. Thank you.
This is like a testimony for how our questions is not as we know it, and how the answers come in such a different way from a different realm to lift up. So in a way you render the question irrelevant. That's the kind of experience, and I feel like that's really hit on the topic of open-mindedness, because we have to see that the question we're asking will be answered with that kind of experience that you just described. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. Yeah, you gain an appreciation for it all, because I remember in The Matrix when Trinity and Neo first meet at the bar, and the sound is really loud, and they're all in there, and then she kind of comes around and she says, "You're looking for him, but you're not really looking for him. You're looking for an answer." And then she whispers in his ear, "It's the question that drives us." So it is the question, ultimately, of who am I, that is driving the seeming search. Even though the one searching is not real, but it does drive the search. And we, like Barbara was saying, all the experiences she went through, and she's just been like, okay, like Francis talked about at the beginning, it looks like you found me, and I don't even know why you keep talking to me, but apparently you're here for a reason, and there is a question underneath that's driving, but then there's an experience that ends the question, and that's why we're here.
Okay, well, I notice we're at the end of our regular time. Do you want to keep? I think we've got like 10 questions, 10 hands up still. So you can just let me know if you feel like
Yeah, let's keep going. We're on a roll.
All right, I see someone who's brand new, Shannon, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Shannon.
Hi there.
Hi,
I was
Shannon.
really wanting to ask for help to just everyone to join with. I've been following the course in this community for about 5 years, but never actually connected with anyone. And I live in Saskatchewan in Canada, so I feel a little bit isolated around the course there. And I just feel like, and to kind of just zone into the exact, is that I have this feeling in my throat, and I feel like it's a metaphor for me of like my ego's last stand of like that's where all the attack thoughts and everything, grievances kind of store here. And I've been like addicted to releasing emotions for quite a few years, just needing to like take time and scream. And I feel guidance that I'm supposed to change that. That's been, and I'm opening to the belief that feeling can fade without doing that. And I feel like it's more about, I really want my prayer to be like for it to go away, but I really want to look at those beliefs and be like, I want to hand over the desires and beliefs that are leading to it, and not just have that surface prayer. And I feel like it's maybe that belief around sin. And I could relate to Barbara because I'm really engaged with my whole circle of people around, like, have lot of trauma around colonialism and in my family, and so I feel like I've been guided to these people, but to do the course and not to get caught in all that. And yeah, I just feel like I need help, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, because yeah, I think that's again for everyone. Your first prayer is to kind of, here's what served me before, but I'm at a point where I have put the symbol of the expressing and the words and the screaming, I've put that, as a helpful device or a helpful symbol, but now it feels like I'm outgrowing, like a child outgrows toys, or as they go along, they just leave them behind, and you're like praying and saying, show me the way from here. And I feel like you speaking up here after these 5 years is so beautiful, because that's really what the testimony is like, here I am, I'm exposing, I'm connecting, I want nothing to hide, I want to hide nothing. And then with the part about sin, I remember a few days ago I was looking at a part of the Course where Jesus was basically saying, you can make mistakes, he said, but you cannot sin. It was like, whoa, Jesus was just, in the Course, he was really cranking it up. You can do this, you can be mistaken, but you cannot sin. And which is so flipped from the background many of us were raised in, which was sin was like the baseline. Like you come together with a group of Christians and they say, somebody expresses, I've got a heavy heart, and they say, come, let's hold hands and pray the sinner's prayer. Okay, so somebody's just poured their heart out, and what you're going to offer them is the sinner's prayer. I am a lowly sinner, but Lord, it's like, whoa, I don't like the way the prayer is starting out if I've got a heavy heart. And what Jesus is saying is that sin is the belief that separation from God is real. And if that's your baseline, and of course that's part of a lot of the theologies, that is the baseline. People will say, yeah, everyone in the world is a sinner, and that's why we start with the sinner's prayer. But if sin is seen as this evil thing, that word that Kristen was just saying, it's not even really in her vocabulary, but for some, the words evil or sin are so predominant that that's the word they've been hearing for years, for generations. And what Jesus is saying is, actually, sin is the cornerstone of the ego's belief. In other words, because the ego raises sin up is so important, is because it's totally dependent on that, on sin, which is separation from God. In other words, that's the starting point of the ego, and every single thing that it teaches is based on sin. And even well-meaning Christians, very sincere Christians, will still talk about sin as a reality. But what Jesus is teaching us is, whoa, no, that sin is not reality. He says, I'm telling you, sin has absolutely nothing to do with reality. It's not really a baseline. You can't really start there. So immediately he starts with the Holy Spirit is saying sin is an error to be corrected. You see, already it's been taken out of the mortal, dark, Darth Vader category. And it's been lifted over to an error to be corrected. I think even if you go back to the Aramaic, if you go back into the old scriptures in the Aramaic Jesus taught in, sin was missing the mark. Sin was not a black mark, an indelible black mark on your soul. It was missing the mark. It was an error, like an archer. When an archer's firing an arrow towards a target, The goal is to hit the bullseye, right? The goal is to have the arrow go right in the middle. But for most archers, they do hit a lot of parts. Sometimes they can't even hit the target. They're all over. That's what you call missing the mark. But it's not a reality. Evil has no reality. And error is something that can be corrected. Then Jesus, once we get that far with him, it's like he said, oh no, you can seem to do many things, but there's one thing you cannot do, and that's sin. You cannot sin. Isn't it great to hear Jesus Christ coming in with, you cannot sin? Then with error, he says, actually too, the Holy Spirit corrected the error. It took the Holy Spirit that long. The Holy Spirit corrected the error the instant it seemed to occur. So now sin is not real, the error has been corrected, and then the focus becomes on, can I accept the correction? You see? Now the whole thing is starting to shift. This is where the screaming can start to loosen up. It's like after, scream for what? It's like, once you start to really get what Jesus, you start to really grok and grasp what he's going at, he's saying, no, the error has been corrected. Now turn yourself toward the light. Turn yourself towards accepting your innocence, accepting your divinity, accepting the correction. Give everything, put it in that direction. That's where the mighty companions can help. Reflections of like, oh, what's going on? And let's pray together and let's unburden our soul here. And so you can see where this whole thing is heading. And then he's got a great line in the Course where he says, you are not responsible for the error, but you are responsible for accepting the correction for the error. Isn't that a great line? You are not responsible for the error, but you are responsible for accepting the correction to the error. Well, he's just overthrowing all traditions and religions that seem to focus on sin, on darkness, on what's been wrong. He's not saying focus on all the things that have gone wrong. He's saying turn yourself instead to what is right-minded, what the correction is. Put all your energy into joining with me on accepting the correction. That's where the heaviness can start to leave, because then it turns into an adventure. You're just on an adventure to join with Spirit to accept the correction. And when you see it as an adventure, then that's a whole different way of reframing it. So I hope that our joining here will help to loosen and dislodge that heavy feeling that you're having there on sin, because I don't think, if I went around to Christian churches preaching this, I don't think it would be the most popular sermon. But I'm into truth. I'm into joy. I'm into happiness. And I'm into you feeling freed up so that you have a softness in your throat and that you can sing sweet hymns of glory from that throat and not be thinking that it has to be always the ego screaming through it, because that's a little bit like beating bataka sticks, It's the old get it out, Get it out of your throat, It's like, well, let's start focusing on the correction, and then that's going to take us up. That helps us rise. You were saying that was your thing. Let us rise. Yeah. So thank you for pouring your heart out.
Okay, next I'll go to Calico. Go ahead, Calico, you can unmute yourself now.
Wow. I'm going to relate back to 3 retreats ago. I asked a question that, David, you responded to. And I've been in deep meditation with the question and just seeing how my mind in this form of calico has functioned from probably the first breath. And it was the ego in this in this calico form has been totally focused on seeing error, which goes along with what you were saying, David. I could not see innocence. I could only see where you're sinning and where you're wrong. And that was my first thought about everybody had some version of that with it. So I asked this question, and it was, I can't even remember really how you phrased it or how I phrased it. And the question is not the issue. The answer was the issue. And your answer to me was something like this. I'm paraphrasing. As an advanced teacher of God, you can't be asking those questions. There was so much wrong with that. I mean, it landed like when I first read The Power of Now, none of it made sense. I read it twice. I went out and got the CDs, started listening to them over and over, and eventually it made sense. But initially it sounded like wah, 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 wah. And I was just dumbstruck because it was coming from you, David, and I don't see you as a guru. But when you share something, I receive it completely, and it lands over here. So I went deep with this, and it was everywhere. It got to the point where every thought I think is an ego thought. I have no thoughts that are anything but ego thoughts. The only time I'm not in ego land is when I'm in deep meditation or asleep. And then it moved into, I live in a spiritual community, and it is such an opportunity for growth, such an opportunity for growth. I go to these meetings and there's usually opinions. There's usually two camps of opinions, over here and over here. And I always have an opinion because calico is an opinion. There would be no figure sitting here without an opinion, because I know who calico is, and I'm going to share with you all my good ideas. And you will either be accepted in loving embrace by me if you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, well, I'm just going to make you more wrong. So I'm seeing this playing out everywhere, just everywhere. And I just went in, I would pause and pray every time the thought stream would just get too chaotic. And I would just, Holy Spirit, my prayer, constant prayer, probably for the past 5 years has been, Holy Spirit, decide for God for me. But this even took it deeper. It's like, Holy Spirit, I want you to decide for me, and I want the experience of the love I am. So in whatever thought stream's coming on, show me where I'm holding shame so I can have this experience of release. And just yesterday we had another community meeting, and I in my head I'm already preparing like, well, I have no opinion. I have no opinion. And I wasn't going to say anything, and I thought I'll just show up for the meeting and love everybody. And the woman that was holding the meeting said, I'm going to go around the room and I want to have everybody's opinion. My ego immediately went, great, you want to hear from me. I'm going to give you my opinion. I've got some great opinions. I was like the second person she called on. And I just sat there going, I have no opinion. And it was so profound. The woman that was right after me, she was saying, did you answer? Did you say something? What did you say? And it's like, I have no opinion. And the beautiful thing about it for me was, is I was wanting this deep sense of experience. When I said that, I truly had no opinion. Tell me to wear a face mask 24/7. Fine. I mean, I cannot even get behind an opinion at this point. And so I love this retreat. This has been so profound. And I just want to give a little shout out just to all the people that are involved in setting these retreats up. They build on each other. So give yourself the gift of consistency, consistent love and truth. And I get that from being on these retreats. And like I said, this was a question I asked 3 retreats ago that I'm still receiving benefit from it. And that's the gift that keeps on gifting as far as I'm concerned. And I thank you all. I am so grateful for this community of open-mindedness, because that's where I'm going. And I join you in that field, holding hands and singing at the top of our lungs. So thank you.
Thank you, Calico.
Beautiful.
Yeah, when you were talking about that and the word, your keyword, when you said experience, it was so cool because I just went right back to that lesson I did yesterday, lesson 158, and I went down into that part where Jesus was saying that an experience will come to the mind. It's already been set. It's like there will come a time where an experience will come, he says in the text, that will end your doubting. And then in lesson 158 he said there's an experience and the mind comes to this point through an experience, but it's not something you learned. And so I was just like, that just still is with me, that one line from yesterday that we tend to talk about in terms of our teaching and learning and all the experiences we've gone through on planet Earth and all the experiences of our personality self. And then Jesus lifts it way out of there and he says, no, it's actually, it's set. It's already been determined by the mind and you attained it not through learning. In other words, it's like what he's saying is everything that we've considered an experience, it ain't it. And God will take the final step, and then you'll go, OMG! and so to me that's what's so cool about this. Just our joy of coming together, that you can even say one word, and then it's like, oh, I'm going into 158 again, and Aries' question about simultaneity, and Jesus saying, oh, there's an experience, all right, but you attained it not through learning. It's the intellectual part that's trying to somehow, it has some kind of a concept of experience, and it's like, trying its best to grab it or get it, like it's in the room somewhere, like there it is, get it. And, but Jesus is like, relax, relax. This is on a realm that is so beyond your teaching and learning that just relax. I got you. You're in the tractor beam. Enjoy. Enjoy the ride up the beam, is what he's really saying to us. And I know for those that are like intellectual students of the Course, they don't even like to hear that. That's like the fun of the chase. You're taking out the fun of the chase or the search. But in the end, it's more of a surrender. That's another word. So thank you. I love it that you are bringing this all up. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Calico. I'm going to go to Christina next. Go ahead, Christina. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Christina.
Hi. That's so precious. This is my group therapy time, and I'm so excited to be with you all. And my 9-year-old actually told me to keep doing this every month because I was so much happier participating. So I'm here by his instruction, my mighty companion. And it's just so powerful because I do tend to share a lot with them about what I'm learning here. And I love to look at movies with them. We look at children's movies and like the Lego movie or different movies and talk about what's happening and how we can, transcend these things together. I told them yesterday I was quitting my job as a mother. And they said, no, you can't quit. We have a contract. I said, well, I'm here because I love you. So I'm doing this for that, for love and just, yeah. So I'm just so thankful to everyone for just having this place for us to be ourselves and to step forward as Christ and to say, this is real for me and this is what I want. And it's just super, super precious. And I guess I felt just really to share one thing. I was looking up Christ consciousness on the YouTube and a couple years ago, and this pastor came out, and he was, a wild speaker, and he actually mentioned that he had an experience with Christ, and that this was an Adamic dream, this whole entire world. And he was speaking the exact same concepts that we are talking about here, and it just blew my mind because he was just a biblical preacher. I thought, here he is, the Spirit's just blasting us all. So just get rid of the lines, evangelical, Hindu, whatever. There's nothing happening there. It's just all light. It's just all love. So thank you so much for witnessing. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you,
Christina. That's great. That's like a blast of open-mindedness circling the globe all over the universe. I'm resigning as mom because I love you. Oh, you had all the backing of the universe and spirit behind you on that one. That's beautiful. I would say too, for some, because I remember my friend Lisa, when I first started, she invited me to her house and to do gatherings there, and she had 2 teenagers actually at the time, and after she spent a few weeks of just kind of looking around, she said, wow, they're just running the house. I go to work, I'm a CEO of a company, I pay the bills, I clean up, I pick up the laundry, I do the laundry, I fix the meals. I'm doing this super mom thing, and they're in charge of the whole house. And I said, I don't think that will really be good for your spiritual development. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, I think, you need to give some reverence to the presence inside you and what feels helpful. And so I worked with her over a few weeks where I said, you're actually going to have to just sit down with them and just talk to them. And so she did a similar thing, but instead of just saying, I'm resigning as mother because I love you, she just kind of got into the first part. And the teenagers reacted with, oh no, you're not. And she said, I think it's important. I've been praying and talking to David, I really feel it's important. And they said, no way. We're the children, you're the mom, you've got these duties and everything, and we're going to play the children role, you're playing the mom role, end of discussion. So then I checked in with her, and I said, week after week, I would say, how's it going? She said, well, World War II erupted after I resigned as the mom. And she said, I guess it had to happen, but there was a lot of stuff that came up. And then after like 2 weeks, the teenagers finally came back to her and they said, listen, if you're not going to play the mom role, then we're not playing the teenager role. And that means we're not going to do anything that you expect the teenager to do. You resign as mom, we resign as teenagers, and then we'll just see what happens. And so I checked in with her the next week and I said, how's it going now? And she said, World War III has started. But eventually, over the years, with her staying the focus of this amazing healing journey, I've known her teenagers as they've grown up into adulthood, and how her discussions with them opened up more about what is real, what is healing. All the communication channels opened up. All of the glory came in there. These ones bloomed like flowers in amazing ways that she could never have imagined. And it just kept on blooming and expanding and expanding. So for you to do that with your 9-year-old son, and then to come in too, I'm resigning as mom because I love you. Wow, I think you've just gone past World War II and World War III. And you're just showing as a demonstration that it's a matter of willingness and our trust and faith, and not a matter of time. By your own faith, we are all set free. So, thank you for being that demonstration and witness for everyone, for all of us to even behold this. It's very good. Thank you, Christina.
Okay, next I will go to Roberto. Go ahead, Roberto, you can unmute yourself.
Hey!
Well, hello!
Hello!
Hello to this lovely community. I'm so grateful to you all. I feel like that we are family. But David, yesterday you were one of those, very deep, moods, and you really go down to the core, and we love it, right? And at the end, you said that you're going to come back to that issue of the script is written, right? So I gave him some thought about that, and then, recently I finally understood, that also in another section, Jesus says that we have responsibility for sight. So everything that comes to us, it came because we asked for and so forth. And the only way I could understand that after some time, and after also listened to Ken Wapnick, but there was a long time that I listened to that, and I remember that he said, well, this responsibility for sight only works at the Christ level. It doesn't work at the individual level. So the responsibility for sight is that, everything has already happened, and then you're watching, whatever is happening with you is your responsibility because you are the Christ. That's the only way I could understand that, okay? And I think that that's probably the only way we will understand this line that the script is written. It's not written for you, David, or for Francis, or for me, or for anybody else. The script is written for everybody at the same time. So that's why the script is written. Then when you take that load off your, the individual view, then you're able to understand it. I just wanted you to comment to see if that's right.
Well, you were mentioning the individual level or perception and then the Christ, but actually what's in between in the vehicle to realize the Christ is the mind. So we're talking about the mind. That's why everything we teach, all guidance is about now and for the mind. So I think that's the point in between. The Christ is just pure light. The individual is the belief in a separate personality. And then the mind, bringing everything back to the mind and coming to that's where we were reading lesson 158, where he was saying, there's an experience for the mind. He didn't say experience for the Christ, because the Christ, is just light. And he didn't say experience for Roberto or David or Francis or the personality self, but he did talk, the beginning of lesson 158 is you are mind, holy mind, purely mind. He even capitalizes in their mind. And he's saying that in the Manual for Teachers that mind is the activating agent of spirit. So in other words, I'm talking about this, and we're using this with everything we teach, every day, every moment, everything we're sharing, part of these online retreats, everything I share when I show source code, everything I share when I show Next, or I show these quantum movies, Mr. Nobody, it's all aimed at having an experience of mind. Because even with Kristen Lorraine, she was talking about watching the scene again in her mind, and all of a sudden she saw that those hands in a whole new way, and she went, "There's no goodbyes. There's no parts. There's no parting," and that is an experience of our mind. Some call it a mystical experience. But I would say that that's where the practicality comes in, of starting to really honestly start to say, oh my gosh, I really need to watch my mind, because everything I think and say and do teaches all the universe. That mind is so powerful. That's why it was pushed out of awareness. The power of it was even pushed away to kind of play small, to play the tiny self, So yeah, I'm glad you're bringing it up, because that lesson 158 is coming to me so strong on this weekend, that it's really calling us to pay attention, to pay close attention. Sometimes he says you're much too tolerant of mind wandering. He's saying pay attention, because your mind is extremely powerful, and you may not fully understand what the mind is even capable of, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to take you back. So thank you for that. That's kind of, to me, that's like the link that, in what the analogy you shared, that's the link that needs. I know Ken, for example, would say, we all have these relationship classrooms and education classrooms, and Jesus was always telling me, it's the mind. The mind is the classroom. The mind and the thoughts are the classroom. Your mind seemed to learn this world of time and space, and now it has to unlearn it. And the personality self is just like a figure, like a little shadow dancing on the movie screen. And all those other things, shadows that are around that shadow, are not the classroom. It's actually the mind, and that's what the whole workbook is about. So it's good. It's good that you're bringing it up, because it's like these are real practical, not only metaphysical questions, but actually there's a huge practical application that I feel is what spiritual awakening is about, which is transcendence of the perception of the body and the world entirely. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you. Love having you on our journey with us. You're keeping us all on our toes in the mind.
Okay, I'm going to go to Lainey next. Go ahead, Lainey. You can unmute yourself.
Hi. Hello, can you hear
Hi,
me?
Lainey.
Yes.
Hi. I just had something on my mind that has been circling around for quite some time, and it's boiling down to holding no private thoughts and no people pleasing, the practicality of that, and actually in a specific situation, and where I perceived that something actually then went wrong when I went for that expression. So I'm just gonna share very briefly of the specific situation, because I just feel that it's just the lead in, and then I just feel that I'm stuck in that perception of how that situation went, and I'm just wishing for a new way to look at that whole thing and reach that point of peace and calmness around it. So it's actually like 6 months ago, we were on vacation with the whole family, me and my boyfriend and our little girl and my mom and his mother also. And we were at a restaurant and we weren't at all satisfied with the food. So we actually decided to complain and tell the restaurant owners that we wouldn't like to pay for like half of the food because it was so bad. And that was really an important step for me to actually speak up and say that this was really so bad. So we don't want to pay for this food. Usually in the past, I would have just thought that, no, don't upset them, and you don't want to get into a conflict with people. You just, eat up and swallow down, But we decided to then tell them. And it got so ugly so quickly. I mean, the restaurant owner then actually attacked us physically. She started grabbing our bags, and my mom was the one that got most hurt in this whole situation. And it's so, I feel guilty for the whole thing, because then I've started to blame myself. Why did you do that? Why did you tell them that you didn't want to pay for the food? Why didn't you just, put on a mask of contentment and just do what normal customers do? And and it's been like really stuck in my mind. And that whole event, it really, we were gone for like 2 weeks, and I really feel that I couldn't shift my perception around that. And it really, it kind of colored the whole vacation. I couldn't find a release from that. It really, I kind of blamed myself that it was my fault, that look what you did now. You spoke up and you didn't people please and you didn't hold private thoughts, and look how it went, So, and I feel really bad. It wasn't even my mom that complained about the food. She paid her part, but she was the one that got scratched on the arm, and really, she grabbed her, and she had some blood flowing and some bruises, and it was just so crazy. And so, and then of course there is this concept of the script is written. If you then apply it on that, if it's I couldn't have done anything differently. My part was really already scripted, So then there is that, do I have personal control even over my own behavior or not? Could I even have chosen a different? So I guess as always, those situations are just a good lead into
Oh, thank you.
Deeper.
Yeah. Well, Lainey, that's great that you're sharing all this with us, because it's there's a couple questions in there, but it's also a great teaching example. The last question you were asked, very end, you brought in the script is written thing, and it's part of the value is changing the way that our habit of how we look at the world, like the setting the goal section Jesus has in the Course, where he says, put the goal out front and be firm in having the goal out front, and then the situation will reflect your goal. Whatever goal you have out front, then you'll see this unified reflection based on the goal. Like Frances, getting all these messages from her mother, and then she's thinking, I'm going to call her, but I really want to see her truly. I really, Frances was praying in her mind, like she was like before the call, she was really anchoring into the purpose for calling her mom, so that she didn't drift off. Because Jesus says in that setting the goal section that without a clear-cut goal out front, the situation just seems to happen, and then you look back on it. And every time you look back on it, you always look back with the ego. Only the ego looks back. The Holy Spirit never, ever looks back on anything. So that's a huge lesson right there, because you've just been replaying this, like Calico was talking about, replaying this question and answer from a few retreats ago. This, ever since this event, it's on your mind. And the ego is just like spinning it like a Rubik's Cube, a tumbler in there, like, oh, Laney, look at, that's bad, whatever, you blew it, you tried no people pleasing, and you did it in the restaurant, and your mom got bruised and bloodied and everything. You see how the ego's guilt, but it's the only one that looks back. It's not like Jesus is in there saying, oh yeah, Laney, let's analyze this. I love to play Sigmund Freud, I really loved it and let's just look back on that and rehash that 100 different ways, maybe a couple hundred more. No, it's the ego that looks back. So that's one great lesson you just are giving us, for all of us, like, don't look back and analyze, because you're doing it with the ego. And then also Jesus says, never analyze the motives of others. So that's a helpful one too, because that's tied into don't look back. We tend to look back with the ego mind and go, what was that restaurant owner thinking? Getting violent with customers and this and that. Now, on a practical thing, I can give you for the future, which is really just for right now, but for what seems to be the future of Laney, let's look at this. That expression sessions are really ways of us getting in touch with our feelings and not just stuffing them down. And that's the good value of you realized, I felt some pretty strong things there, and I might have just in the past just stuffed it down, bite my lip and go out and not say a word. And so you were determined to, like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to get this caught inside of me. And so you were aware of those feelings around the food and around the taste of the food. You're thinking, that's really bad food. The thing about it is, when you do an expression session, or whenever we do expression sessions, it's one thing to express, but it's another thing to put an outcome at the end of the expression. In other words, your expression was, this is terrible food, this is bad food, and I don't want to pay the bill. You see how that would be like having a talk with your boyfriend and said, I'm feeling awkward, or I'm feeling uncomfortable, I really don't want to do this right now, or you just, like with your boyfriend, your mother, or your daughter, just expressing what you feel. But when we put the tail end on it, and it's bad food, and I don't want to pay the bill, you see how we set the terms for our happiness based on an expectation of how the restaurant should respond. Oh, miss, I'm so sorry. I'm glad you told us that. Of course, please, take that off the bill immediately. Maybe we have some kind of a scenario in mind. We may or may not. But still, when we put that expectation, like we're doing an expression session, for us to heal in our mind, and then we put the hook of how it has to come out, and I don't want to pay for this. It's bad, and I don't want to pay for this. You see that we add the expectation. Jesus tells us in the Course, every moment of every day, you're always egoically trying to add something on. Instead of just let all things be exactly as they are and be in a state of perfect non-judgment, the ego is always trying to say, it would be a little bit better. It would be better too if, we shouldn't have to pay. We should not have to pay for bad food. That's just an assumption. That's just a belief. then it's seemingly the witness you got back is from the owner. I don't share that belief. In fact, this owner vehemently did not share that belief, you see, but because we have the expectation there, then we not only do the expression, but then that comes in. Now, the third thing that's coming to mind is just the context. I always talk about, share what's on your heart, let it up, get in touch with it and everything. It reminds me of that first time when I was in Hawaii and I was doing a retreat, and JP, Francis's partner, came to the retreat at the founder's house, and he came and he intently listened. And the whole first day I talked about not stuffing, not repressing, not keeping things bottled up, express, expose everything, and everything. So that was my first day of the weekend. And so JP was there for the whole day, and he was like, fantastic. So he went to his girlfriend and he spilled the beans. He told her everything in his mind. Every thought he had, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the ugly, the whatever, and everything. And then he comes back the next day to the second day of the retreat, and he said, well, I tried to practice the no private thoughts and no people pleasing, but it didn't go well. He said, it did not go well at all. Whatever the reaction of the girlfriend was, it was just like, are you kidding me? It was pretty wild. But he said, maybe I'm missing. I said, oh yeah, today's the second day of the retreat. I'm going to talk about discernment. No private thoughts, no people pleasing. And now we talk the next day on discernment. Discernment, again, it comes to prayer. Whenever we do an expression session, it has to be very prayerful about the purpose. Again, the goal has to be so strong out in front. And even that is where you have to, I will step back and let him lead the way. For example, in this case, you might have thought, wow, that food is really bad, and I need to talk about this. And you might have just paid the bill, gone to the ladies' room, and said to Gertie, your mother, I need to express something about that food. That was bad. That was bad food. Gertie, Course in Miracles student, your mother, you share the same purpose of not repressing, not denying. You both are linked. She's your mighty companion. She's your mind training partner in this and this. You see the difference of the context of sharing the food was bad with your mind training partner in the context of the purpose and the prayer versus sharing it with whoever, the waiter, the waitress, or the owner, or whatever, which there can be a high investment in the self-concept, so you understand more and more. That's where that setting the goal in your mind becomes so helpful, because then you start to become more prayerful, like Frances was before she had that call with her mother. She was, getting all these messages about pandemic and South, where are you? Are you healthy? Are you healthy? But she waited, prayed. What is it that I really want to share? What is it I really want to see in my mother? You see that it's a very prayerful approach. That's really what you're asking. But as far as the ego, all the ego sees is what went wrong. You see, it's not interested in the correction. It is interested in falsely analyzing the problem. Oh, it likes a wild goose chase into the past. It loves a wild goose chase into the past because that just reinforces the past is still here. It reinforces the so-called reality of the past when really your purpose is not to reinforce the past at all. You want to set it free. So thank you. Just you sharing that little scenario with all of us is just loaded with rich wisdom and teaching opportunity, you see, because of your prayer for I need some help. Here's a specific situation. Then we all get lit up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Gertie. Thank you, Lenny. Whole family. Boyfriend, daughter, Christ.
Okay, next I'm going to go to Krista. Go ahead, Krista.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. It's funny. I'm nervous. The last 20 minutes, I was repeating what I was gonna say. I noticed, and suddenly I was really shivering and cold, and I don't know what's happening. But what I wanted to share was like 3 hours ago when you started this talk, you mentioned something like you are not alone because you have mighty companions. And that hit me because what I noticed watching the movie last night is what hit me really hard was feeling really lonely. And the movie was sorry, I've yeah, being really, really, really alone just hit me so hard. And what I was practicing saying is like I feel like everything is so radical in my thoughts, and it feels like there's no way back. That's obvious. But it feels for me like everything I know and everything I think I know and feel, and it's like a big store, and it has to come to one point, and then it can open up again. So and I don't know how I can explain that, but it's like I am longing for something I don't know, and I'm drawn to your retreats and YouTubes and everything, and but it's almost like I'm searching for something I really don't know, and there's not even 1% percentage I know about it, but still I'm drawn to it. But it's hitting so hard because there is so much fear and so much anger and irritation and everything, and it's like I'm hitting this wall all day long, and I cannot step back from that. So even going outside, and I'm gonna be the lady with the dogs, but walking with my dogs and meeting really gentle, nice old lady every day. And we're talking about the weather every day. So if the sun is shining, she said, "Oh, the weather is nice," and if it's raining, "Oh, that's not." And it's like I'm not myself. I'm outside of myself, and I'm looking at her, and she's saying, "Oh, it's cold," and it's right. I'm like, wow, you're. How do I explain it? Like this mirror, and I'm losing my breath now and my words, but I so much want to explain. It's like I hitting this wall, like realizing that I never ever in my whole life really been with someone, really had normal contact. So when she's saying something, it's like I'm watching outside of myself, and I'm like, I have to say something back, but nothing is right, and I'm isolating myself now. I know it seems like it's so radical that I don't know how to talk to people anymore, because it's all fake. It's all chit chat, and I'm looking at myself, and yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we can talk about that. That's beautiful, though, that you're aware, you're in touch with that, Krista, because it's quite common too when people who are working with the Course or working on healing that you start to notice even the most mundane or the basic interactions. You start to get this feeling like, oh my God, look at how fake that is. Before, you weren't even aware of the fakeness, and then the next thing is you're thinking, what is this? This is like, it's like a reaction, but there's no authenticity to it. But again, even though that's like an insight, the ego is like saying, yeah, that's why you're a mess. It comes right in and says, look at you, you're a fake. This is fake and you're fake. And then it doesn't feel good. We feel isolated and closed down. And so you're asking, like, I don't really know how to go through this. I go through this with the dogs and meeting this woman every day, but the next step, what Jesus wants us to do, is he wants us to realize that we just be open to a miracle and just be open to the involuntary nature of the miracle, and we're open to more. The question is, as you get those dogs ready to go out, is, okay, what do I want to come of this walk? What are the feelings? What is the purpose for this walk? And you're going to let Jesus put the words in your mouth. This is different because you're not used to it. You're used to Krista selecting to talk or not to talk. You see how different that is. We're used to we believe that we're autonomous people. We decide when to speak, when not to speak. We control the actions of the body and everything like this. And Jesus is saying, you really need to let me be in charge of all the things of time and space, and just be willing to join with me in your mind. And it's going to be different at first. It's going to feel a little odd, and strange, because the ego is going to think it's very odd, weird even. But then you start to just let your words, you let the whole encounter just happen spontaneously without trying to control it. And you watch how the ego wants to jump back in there and control the interaction. But you're just going to practice now with, okay, I'm going to take my walk. You walk with me this time, Jesus. And you, if there's any interaction in words, if there's any words to speak, you be the one. Because I'm interested in seeing something new. I don't know what that thing is even, but I want a new way of experiencing myself and being. One time back in the 1993 or maybe 1994, I was with a whole group of students, and it was a snowy day in Denver, and we all walked out. It looked like a Currier and Ives snow scene. It was like there was beautiful snow on everything, and we all go out. And this is a very devoted Course in Miracles community back in Denver, Colorado, that I was part of. And we go out and we walk across one of these little walking bridges, and as we're walking across the walking bridge with all the snow scene and everything, one of the students, she went, it's so beautiful. And then she turned and looked at me with a sense of guilt, like she just committed a sin, that exclaiming how beautiful the scene was. Almost like she'd violated lesson number 1, nothing I see means anything. She was from Australia. It's actually Alexandra. She was like, it's so beautiful. And then she went, like with a look of terror on her face, turning to the teacher, that she had violated some kind of thing. And I remember going, yes, it is. Because it's never about the specific words, it's never about the specific situation, it's always about the purpose that you are giving in your mind, which is the Holy Spirit and with Jesus, and then from that place of rest and relax and peace, then even the words that come out of the mouth are just given. Everything is given. And you're off the hook of trying to think that you have to figure out how to break out of this pattern of, oh, it's a sunny day. Isn't it nice? It's a sunny day. Oh, it's raining. It's raining today. Oh, that's too bad. The next day. But it's sunny today. Yes, isn't that nice? It's rainy. That's what a pity. You see, it's like, it seems like the world we're so accustomed to is like a broken record. It's just going round and round and round and round and round, and then you're like thinking, this is really fake. This is really fake. But not in a joyful way. You're in a depressing way. You're thinking this is really fake. And Jesus is saying, oh no, that's okay, that's a good insight. And it doesn't stop there. Like, now come and join with me and let me show you how judgment through you rather than by you. You see, if it's by you, it's Krista going, another fake encounter. Damn. There's nothing joyful or authentic about just habitually going through these fake encounters. But that's judgment by you, meaning by the ego. And then judgment through you is what we talked about on this weekend for Open-Mindedness, where I read that passage where Jesus says, you don't have to figure out how to stop judging, you just have to realize that you're not even capable of judgment in the first place. And the only way to do that is to allow judgment through you rather than by you to occur. So that's great. I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is all about practicality. That's really what you're asking for. It's like, I want to feel some connectedness and joy, and that's what I want to light my life up. That's what I'm asking for. And then this encounter we're having is just like, just a little bit of a prayer saying, are you willing to just, before you go out with the dogs, to just say a little prayer, like I need help, because the ego doesn't need any help interpreting the world. It's the ego's world. It's a world of judgment. It's like, no, thank you. Your mind is like saying, I think maybe we need help here, and the ego's like, we do not need help. I can repeat the same old error and judgments over and over. The ego doesn't ask for help for interpreting and guiding. But your mind, your sleeping mind, is not the ego. It knows that it has something more. You don't know what that is, but there's something much more. So just ask that prayer. Ask the Spirit to join you tomorrow on your walk with the dogs. You'll see. You're already smiling. See, just even thinking about it, you got to smile, because it is very different. Admittedly. All of us, it's very different when we start to do that. But then we have some very wonderful experiences that come. That's what Ken and Greg were talking about. All these experiences that came to them, and there was glee and joy, even though they didn't see it coming. And Francis was saying, it's doing it to us. Really, it's choosing us. You've been chosen. You've been chosen as part of this wake-up, even if it's only 1% that you feel you can relate to that calling. You have been called by the Spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista.
Hi. Can I add something?
Sure.
Yeah. When I first started the course, and that is something that won't leave my mind, and maybe that's a good thing. I had this really strange experience walking down the street, and suddenly everything collapsed, or I don't know what happened. And that night I was so happy, and I was overflowing with happiness, and I wrote down, and one of the things I wrote down was very happy at that moment. There's no one gonna catch you. There is no one there. There's nothing. There's no one's gonna save you. And I was so happy at that moment. And I want to go back to that, but it's like that is what is hitting me the hardest, because I noticed that all my life I have been leaning on my parents or friends, and there must be some deeply rooted belief that I cannot be on myself in this world. I cannot do this on myself with work and house and everything. Yeah, but I'm not sure yet where this is going, but I felt like saying it because this is where I get stuck so much. And there's just a lot of fear, and it's like everything is coming at the same time. Everything is coming together right now, and there's like a crying out for I am right that I am that I cannot do this on my own. and it's really like it's going up and down, and I so much want to just jump and let it all go. Yeah.
Thank you, Krista. Yeah, just remember, like when Kenneth talked on Friday night, he had a realization he couldn't do it on his own, and when Greg shared his experiences, he couldn't do it on its own. When Barbara was talking with her, doing her 12-step thing, I can't do it on my own. So you can start to just revel and be grateful for that feeling, and don't even try to figure it out. Just you can, because the happiness comes from just this inner feeling like I can't do it on my own, and I don't need to do it on my own. That help is given me. So if you just stay with that, then you can start to relax into it. Like Kenneth and Greg talked about on their journeys. They had to. Things just started happening. It just was all happening, and it was happening, like you said, fast. And then, but instead of trying to like hold on or grip or cling, it was just more this inner awareness. I don't have to do it on my own.
And feeling like I have to make sure I am not gonna go off. Because I was also remembering for some reason in this weekend that Peter, who's here in the studio right now, because I met him in Australia before we joined the community together. We're in the same course group. And then one day Peter came to me and said he had this huge mystical experience where he was so happy beyond this world, and he couldn't stop laughing because he was happy for no earthly reason. He couldn't stop laughing for the longest time. And then when he came out, he was frustrated because all he wanted was to come back to that place. So it's like, sometimes in this journey we are given this huge, vast glimpse, and then the work starts. Then let's just relax, because it's not up on our shoulder to make, like, those experiences are given, it's not learned. No matter how much you learn, you can't generate it. But it's like a relaxation and giving ourselves over to what shows up, to trust Jesus has got us, in a way.
Yeah. Be grateful for the glimpse.
Yeah, grateful for the glimpse.
Okay, well, we've got one more hand up from Andy. Go ahead, Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah, I just wanted to let go of any grievances I had with the community. I just wanted to I wanted to let go of the grievance that I was told to leave and take responsibility for my mind. And I wanted to share an experience I had yesterday, too, of Christ's vision. Before I started, I took the healing time to just I looked at everyone in the mind and forgave saw the innocence in them. And then the retreat started, and it was peaceful. It was a miracle. And time lapsed. It was unspeakable. But I wanted to let go of any grievances I had and take responsibility for sight.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you for the prayer,
That's
Andy.
beautiful.
I'm really inspired by the community, and thank you for all that you do, and I'm so grateful. Yeah, thank you. I just want.
Thank you.
So grateful
We
for
love
you.
you. We thank you. Beautiful. Okay, well, beautiful. What a healing weekend. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us, sharing in it. And it's always beautiful to see your faces and read. We were able to go through some of the beautiful prayers and questions, but just thoroughly enjoyed reading them all. And Seema, thanks for sending that song today. We enjoyed that right when we were coming up to the studio, and feeling the joy of that launched us into this whole session. So thank you, and thank just the blessings that you're all sharing out so freely with us. It feels so natural and so easy and so wonderful just to show up and be so transparent. And we're so glad that you realize that whether you can remember what you were even going to say, or whether you pre-planned it, or whether you just showed up and were called on by Eric and right there exposed, you start to see that it's all in divine order, and it's all being used for this holy purpose of healing. So that's what I really love, that you feel that. You feel the love and the connection, that you can just show up and share whatever you need to share, and not feeling hiding or holding back anything. And what a treat for us to participate in this. Always look forward to this. So thank you all. Been very profound. Very profound.